converted. So this is a very interesting number. Every top executive, product managers keep on focusing because this is how your revenue will come. The more customer come and buy your product, your revenue is going to increase in that many numbers. And the second one is the retention rate, right? So as we always tell, Grahak Bhagwan hai. We never want to let our existing customer let it go to and use a different product. And there are some interesting stats around that, right? So the probability of selling existing customer is 60 to 70% more than a new customer. And there are chances that 50% you can sell the new product 50% more likely than, and they are going to spend more than your new customer. So nobody want to let it go the customer they already have, because the acquisition cost of any customer is significantly huge, as you all know. So there's a simple math around that, retaining, how you calculate the retention rate. So for example, if you have 100 users by end of the year month, beginning of the month, and let's say 20 people added to your, you acquire 20 people by end of the month. So let's say that's 120. But in that range, you already have 15 people quit your site and they left away. So 20 minus 15 is 5 people. So 105 is your overall people that you have at the end of the month. And if you do this math, it will come around 85% of the conversion rate, which is pretty significantly good, right? So you need to remember this two key matrices. One is the conversion rate and other is the retention rate, to improve your UX capability. Because if you see more number of drops, that means there is significantly wrong in your UX, because people are disengaging with your product. And to tell you next, I'll touch upon few of the practices for the user research. So let me tell you why we need to do any user research. So for the you need to understand your users for whom you are building your product, right? Because ultimately they are the guys who are going to use your product. So you need to understand their empathy. Then you need to understand and sit with them to understand what is their problem. Are we solving the real problem for them, or we are not solving the real problem for them? If the customer is expecting something else, are we giving those features in our product? So you do some analysis. So primarily there are two type of analysis we do. One is the qualitative, that we focus on why part of that, why users is doing in certain ways. So this deals with the emotional aspect, and we do qualitative analysis only for a very small number of set, because you need to really sit with the customer, go into their and sit with them, understand, do an interview, do your analysis on them, usability testing, to find out with insights so that you can grab those and improve upon. And the other one is the quantitative aspect of that. So it is basically give you a lot of data. You run this quantitative analysis for a very large scale of users. So I'll tell you one of the example on the quantitative, which is the A/B test. So A/B test is like, it's easy to understand, right? Here you run few tests. You want to test few features from your site, whether that is really making an impact or not. So you make two similar looking product with a little tweak on that special feature that you want to test it, and give two options, run those tests for a significant amount of time to grab the stats to see out of A or B, which is doing better. So to give you some more example on that, I'll tell you the story of Jalora. Jalora is one of the leading online fashion retailer for APAC region. So that they did an interesting A/B test. So the problem they were having is they introduced a new button, a new feature rather, I would say, on their product page to improve upon their number of checkouts. So they introduced a free delivery features, thinking that this feature will be improving our number of percentage of buying, how the user is going to use this. And the hypothesis they were testing is whether these features will work or not work. So, but they are getting several calls from their customer care center, that people are not aware of this feature. Many of them don't even pay attention to on their product page, even if that message is still there. So, and this is what the hypothesis they initially they were trying to test. So they thought that the pre-written policy will increase the number of orders. But the reality was something different. So they come up with an A/B test, similar looking to different product page. They run this product page. So the A side, where the initially they build, which was giving a problem to them. On the B, if you see, they did a little tweak around the free delivery area. So what they did is they changed the wordings from free in the right hand side to the left hand side, because that is the first word that person is going to see. Our human brain, when we read English, we read always from left to right. So the first word you will come across is the word free, which, and we all love free stuff, isn't it? Right. So, and that is how they grab the user attention more than the earlier version, and the number of checkout rate has been significantly increased to around 12% on a very short duration of time. So this is one of the success story that I can tell you on the A/B test. And I think overall with that, I would like to conclude my presentation with a simple thought from Dr. Ralph Path, who is the CEO of Jaguar. He says that if you think good design is expensive, you should look at the cost of bad design. With that, I think I conclude my presentation. Over to you, Suresh. Thank you.
Right. Thanks so much, Dipan. Thank you for the fantastic session. We do have some questions coming up from the audience, and I'll just bring them up in a moment. I'll just try to check through it. Um, all right, let me see. We have here. So while you were talking about the startups and other companies, Dipan, what would be your thoughts? Because some of the established companies today have adopted, or rather invested in design in a very big way, and that's why you can see them succeeding, on a larger scale. What do you feel are the challenges, or maybe hurdles for startups to invest in design? Of course, everybody thinks that design is a critical aspect of the success of a company, but we do not see that in the reality where people are investing
Yeah.
a large
Yeah.
amount of money into design. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so that's a good question, Suresh. So basically, in my prospect, we have to run through phases of this. So I'll take this as a four-step approach. So the first thing you need to understand the problem from the customer, then build your prototype, run around the test around your prototype, whether the prototype is working, people are engaging with your product, or they're not engaging your product, and then come up with your data set on how the people are using that prototype, what are the key challenges, and try to iterate and improve upon those. Because that is how this is a continuous process. The UX design is a continuous process. It may work at the first time, it may not work at the first time, because you have to keep on doing and keep on investing and researching on this aspect, and then only you can improve
Sure.
upon your customer experience as we go forward.
Great. One other question over here is about what it reads like is what are the metrics you should focus on in a B2B setup, right, where number of
Yeah,
customers are less?
yeah. So B2B setup is primarily basically, that's an interesting question. So B2B is because the number of users are maybe very limited. So the key focus should be retaining those users. So you need to spend too much of time, significant amount of time, because they are going to be your revenue generator. So you need to focus your customer retentions, try to engage them, try to upselling or cross-selling them as we go forward, and then also keep on focusing on the new customer acquisition as well, because that's all bit harder in the B2B, rather than, because that already work how your contacts are, on what business you are, and what are your competitor are. So yeah, so these are the key aspects you probably need to focus upon.
Right, great. I really liked, the quote which you have put up. Don't bother about the number of investment you do. Bother about when you don't have the investment done and what's the cost of that not investing into design for a product. It's a great thought. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much for the fantastic session. I think the audience loved it. We do not have any more questions.
Yeah.
Hopefully, they'll be there on your LinkedIn page. Maybe you can go ahead and answer them, in your
Yeah.
leisure time.
Yeah. I'm looking
Um,
forward to that.
yeah. So, as a as a special token appreciation from all of us at the Product Leadership Festival 2020, hosted by IPL, which is Indian Institute of Product Leadership. Here is a virtual badge for you.
Thank
The
you.
QR code takes you to your own dedicated Hall of Fame page on the Institute's webpage. Once again, thank you so much, Dipan, for your time.
Thank you.
Really
Thank you.
appreciate and have a great weekend.
Thank you. Thanks, Suresh, and thanks everyone for having me here. Have a good weekend too. Thank you. And I am sure there are a lot of interesting sessions coming up. So keep tuned. Thank you.
Right. Thanks a lot. Okay.
Moment, we will move on to the next session. So for the next session, please ask your questions on the QR code that you see here.
Yes, and please fill up the form which is flashing on your screen right now. The feedback is crucial. All right. So with that, let me jump on to our next speaker, Bhavana. And Bhavana is going to talk to us about improving customer experience in search results pages as a case study. And a little about Bhavana is that she's a product manager currently at Big Basket. She works on improving customer experience for the overall on-site. She considers herself a designer at heart, product person by mind, and an engineer by her roots. She's a QA engineer turned into a product manager and is passionate about her user-friendly design, be it hardware or software. And she believes in giving her learning back to the product community in whichever way she can. She loves blogging and loves to share interesting stories about product design and technology in general. So welcome, Bhavna, and over to you straight away.
Awesome. Hello. Thank you, everyone, firstly, for joining on a Saturday evening. So let's quickly get started. I'll just share my screen. I hope you're able to see my screen, right? Okay.
Yes, we can see, Bhavna.
Awesome.
Please go ahead.
So, okay. So today we will be talking about the case study of Big Basket of how we improve the search results, thereby improving the customer experience on the search results page, which in turn will lead to more add to carts from your search results page, and that will of course improve your revenue. Right. So at Big Basket, I have been working on product search for close to 2 years now, and today I'm going to share those case studies with you. Right. So. Okay. So firstly, talking about the CTA that you will provide on the search results page. So for example, in grocery business, right? So Big Basket is, as you know, India's largest online grocery supermarket. So here, what we think is that when it comes to grocery, like onion, or when you're searching for rice, you don't have to go to the product description page and then decide, right? So if you look at the screenshot on the left, so as soon as you search, right, you will find an add to basket button, right? And when it comes to grocery business, the main thing is the pack type, right? Whether you need 2 kg rice or 5 kg rice, correct? So all of this information, if you can provide in the search results page itself, it will make sure that the customer can quickly see that major information and add that product to basket. But if you think about Amazon, right? So I mean, it deals products of various categories. So when you search for iPhone or computer, for example, you will need to look into a lot of specifications, which you will get only in the product description page. So that is the reason we do not have an add to cart add to cart button on Amazon page. Now, similarly, if you look at Myntra, right? So where you're shopping clothes, the CTA or the button which they have given is the wish list option, correct? Like in Myntra, when you search for UCB t-shirts, you will find that wish list option so that you will wish list few products and then in the end you can buy one or two, correct? So one of the key things that we do in grocery business is that we have provided add to basket button right on the search results page. So similarly, in your website, you can decide whether to provide add to basket button or wish list or maybe nothing. Right? It depends on the kind of products that you sell. So that is one of the key things. Now coming to the search data, right? So if at all you're selling like 20, 30,000 products on your site, you will get a million queries every day, right? Now, how do you even look at the queries? Of course, we cannot go through query by query, right? So what we will do is first we will classify this huge, massive search data into 3 simple buckets, okay? So before going there, I will talk about what is search query. So search query is nothing but whatever user typed in the search box, correct? So if at all I typed rice and system also understands rice as a word, so it means that the search query and the search term was the same, correct? And in this case, we will call it as a successful search. Now, similarly, let's say you search for conflicts, okay? I mean, it's a wrong spelling of conflicts. Now, system could not find any product which has this spelling, correct? And now, one thing is it will also try to correct the spelling, but unfortunately, for this spelling of conflicts, even your search system could not correct it, right? So in that case, we showed 0 results to the customer. So where we will say no results found for conflicts. So that is when the bucket will be for failed search, that where we showed no results for the customer. Now we'll come to the third category where let's say I type for Maggie. Okay. Now the system could correct it to the correct spelling of Maggie. And similarly, Lysol. So there's a wrong spelling, but the system could correct it to the right spelling of Lysol. So this is what we will classify as partial success, where we did show results. The system could correct whatever the user typed, it could correct it to some relevant spelling. So that is what we will call as partial success. Okay. Now, what will we look in these buckets? Right? So if you think about it, each of these buckets will have like 10,000 queries. What will we look at? So what we did is that we sorted it in descending order. Basically, what I mean is that we will look at the queries which have got maximum number of searches, right? So if we can fix the queries for which people are searching more and more, and then look at the queries which have low traffic, we will be able to solve major problems. Right? So for example, in case of failed searches, right, where we showed no results at all. So few examples could be conflicts and chocolate. I mean, these are the kind of spelling that we actually get. So this is all real data, okay? So failed searches, so here there are no results. So obviously the conversion rate is 0, okay? Now, if you think about partial bucket, where we are saying that, okay, the user entered query A, but system corrected it to some term B. Now, we never know whether it is correcting it in the right way, correct? So previously, we saw examples where the system could correct it in the right way. But now what we will see is, we will also see that the system did not actually correct it in the right way. For example, Volini, we do not have Volini products on BigBasket, but users searched for Volini and the system was correcting it to volumizing. And similarly, users were searching for Nevia and the system was correcting the spelling to Evian, which is completely irrelevant, right? So, but these problems, you will be able to notice it only when you look at each query, correct? But now, again, we cannot look at each and every query, that those 10,000 queries, right? So what we looked at is, we took the top ones. Let's say out of 10,000, we took the top 500. And what we said is, we'll see for these 500 queries, which have the least conversion rate, correct? Let's say your website has 50% conversion rate on search results page. Okay. Now, what we did is, we looked at 500 or 1,000 queries which had less than 10% conversion. So that means even though we are showing some results, people are not adding items to basket. So it clearly means that search results are off. I mean, of course, there could be various factors playing here. It could be the price, that, okay, there is no discount, or maybe all the products are also out of stock. But I mean, keeping these things aside, which as a product person, you will not be able to control this, right? You may not be able to control the price of a product. It is something which the category managers do. But from a product point of view, what could you do? Correct? So here is where you will have to look at the queries with maximum number of searches, but a very low conversion rate. Okay. So we'll see what we did. Okay. So first thing that we did was we fixed the easy problem. Correct. So the easy problem is to fix the spell correction, where we said that, okay, Nivea should be corrected to the right spelling of Nivea, and conflicts, you have to correct it to the right conflict spelling. So two ways, if at all you want to solve it in the right way, in the best way, we will have to make changes in the system's correction algorithms, right? But let's say you do not have much time and you have to fix at least few queries very, very quickly. So what you could do is you could build a manual spell check, where you will do one-to-one mapping, where you will say, okay, for this spelling of Nivea, correct it to this spelling of Nivea, correct? Because your system is already handling, let's say, 90% of incorrect spellings, right? We saw Maggie and Lysol getting corrected to the right spelling. But now the system's algorithm is not able to correct everything like that. Okay? So that is the reason maybe you could first experiment with a manual spell check level. But if you have more time, more bandwidth, then of course it's better to improve using the system's spell correction. Correct. So that was the easy one to fix for the spell corrected queries. Now, if you think about Volini case, so Volini, the spelling is also right, but we do not have those products at Big Basket currently. Okay. Maybe, see, of course, users will want various brands to be present on your website, but it will take time for the e-commerce website to get all of these products on your website. Correct. So in that time, what could you do as a product person? Correct. So Volini, what we decided is that is basically customers are looking at some pain relief cream or spray. Now, what are the alternate products? What are the similar products that we could show for Volini? So we said that we will map Volini to move. Right. So that is the screenshot that you will see here. Right? No results found for Volini. You may be interested in these similar products. And we showed move products. So here we did two things, right? So first thing, instead of showing no results page for Volini, that, okay, we don't even have Volini, or let's say it corrected it to volumizing. So in that case, it is completely irrelevant. I mean, users will feel that, okay, what is the search even doing? So in that case, what we did is that we are telling, okay, we do not have Volini, maybe you are interested in these similar products. So you ensured good customer experience there. And who knows, if at all I am not a person who is very brand conscious, but I'm really in need of a pain relief spray, I would buy this Move product, right? So there, what you did is you just sold a 200 rupees item, correct? Just by tweaking your search algorithm. So this is how we fixed one of the problems with respect to queries which had very low conversion. Okay. So similarly, another example was Teddy Bar. Teddy Bar, also we do not have that brand product. So we said that we will map Teddy Bar to Subameth, and we will show, okay, no results found for Teddy Bar, and you may be interested in these similar products, and then you will see Subameth results. So this is how we fix the easy problems. Okay. So this was fixing the failed searches, and let's say this was fixing the partial searches. Now we will look at success bucket, okay, where we will say the successful search actually mean successful conversion, right? So for example, if you think about the whole bucket, let's say 80% was successful, 10% was failed, and 10% was partial. Does that 80% of does it mean that 80% of your queries are working well, right? But that is not the truth, okay? The answer is no, that it's not like 80% of your queries are working really well. And I'll give you this example here. So if you think about, if you see this example on the right, let's say I searched for red chili maybe 6 months back on Big Basket. What I was seeing is, I was seeing this product. Okay, when I searched for red chili, the first result that I saw was BB Royal Masala Cashew Red Chili. Okay. Now, I mean, it's very apparent that why this came. It's because I searched for red chili and PD, the product description had red chili. But if you think about it, this is not the right result that what the customer is looking for. When people search for red chili, I mean, you can even search that on Google, you will find dry chili products, right? So basically what we mean is what customers are trying to search is for dry chili, okay? But when users were searching for red chili, we were showing this and the conversion was very less. So that is when we searched on Big Basket and we saw, oh, we are showing the wrong results. So that is when we added synonyms, okay? So synonyms, just to tell you what it means that they are regional level terms. They are the same thing. For example, onion, pyaz, and iruli are synonyms. That is, if you search for pyaz, you have to show on onion products. And similarly, iruli is onion in Kannada. And if I search for iruli, we should show onion products, right? So especially when it comes to grocery business, you know that people tend to search in their regional language words, correct? So this is something called synonyms, and it's pretty common when you're building a search engine. So now what we did here is we just said that, okay, red chili and dry chili are synonyms. So once we just added that synonym, it was like a 2 minutes fix. Okay. So once I added dry chili and red chili as synonyms, we started showing organic red chili, stemless red chili, and all of these products. So that was the first thing that we did. And one more improvement which the content team did is that they also added uh, red as part of the product description so that customers can easily relate to it. Let's say when I searched for red chili, if at all I showed the red chili product, the title read as BB Royal Organic Dry Red Whole, right? I mean, red chili whole. In that case, maybe there is a slightly disconnect. So that is when content also stepped in and they also added this red in the product description. So this is how you will improve the experience on the search results page, right? I mean, it's always best to show the relevant results on at least the first 10. I would say the first 10 should be extremely relevant, and that is when you can ensure the best conversion rates on your search results page. And to conclude, what are the search KPIs? So you will have to look at the percentage of failed searches, right? So you have to ensure that the number of failed searches where we are showing 0 results is extremely low, right? Because either your spell correction or maybe those products are not even there, but you will have to figure out a mechanism that how can you show similar products. So that is the first point. And coming to the second one, when the results are shown, you have to ensure that the add to cart conversion is high, right? So if at all your average is 50%, you have to ensure that most of your top queries, at least, of course, you cannot ensure 50% conversion on all the searches, but at least your top ones, if at all you can solve for those queries, your major problems are solved. So I would say focus on the queries which has very high traffic, which people are searching very often, but very low add to carts are happening, right? So that is where there is a problem with the search results. So, and these problems, they get revealed only when you look at query level data. Like at a high level, if I think about it, okay, 80% of my queries are working well, then we would have never been able to solve the problem of red chili, right? So I think with that, I will conclude this. So thank you for joining the session on a Saturday evening. Happy to take questions.
Great. Thanks so much, Bhavna. It was quite an insightful session.
Sure.
I have a couple of things on my mind right now, and with your permission, if I may ask.
Sure, of course.
Right. So you mentioned, there are two things that I have to basically ask you. One is, have you experimented with the autofill, kind of approach, wherein people don't have to have a lot of cognitive, pressure on their brain to type out. Rather, it automatically comes to them and they can simply pick. What is your learning from there? And if you have tried that. And second one is about you mentioned about regional language, I mean, regional names for products. Have you experimented with languages, as in, having search queries in languages. Have you even explored that part of for your products?
I didn't get the second question, but let me answer the first one. So I think your question is, have we done any improvements in the auto search part of algorithm, right? Is that what you're asking?
That's right. So the user does not, the queries come in properly from them. So when they get to, auto, pick things, so the spelling is correct for the database. Yes.
Yes. So we have done a lot of improvements in auto search also. So if you think about it, the minute you type, like if you start typing APPL, you will start seeing Apple results. Like if you start typing ONI, you will see the first result to be onion, right? So we have improved a lot of, we have improved the algorithm in auto search also. And even if you type a wrong spelling in the auto search algorithm, even in the auto search bar, we will see a good enough spell correction algorithm kicking in there also. See, the thing is, the spell correction algorithms, right? It is different in auto search and it's different in product search. And the reason is, once you start typing, you really need to show the suggestions very quickly, right? But in product search, people are also slightly more patient because you are taking them to a different page. But when it comes to suggestion, you have to ensure that the suggestions are shown within like in milliseconds, right? So the kind of spell correction that works in auto search is slightly less smarter than what would happen in the search results page. And if you think about it, even before you enter, let's say you search for one, I'm just thinking of examples. So let's say oil, when you type oil, so oil could mean various categories, correct? So it could mean your cooking oil, it could mean hair oil, or it could also mean baby oil for that matter. Now, we could show all of this in auto search, right? So if you see Amazon also, it shows that in the results. And even in Big Basket, we show that in the results. And once you start typing oil, you will see oil in, I think it shows oil in some cooking oil category, right? Now, we could also show other categories saying oil and hair oil also. But the thing is, when you refer to oil, people they are mostly searching for cooking oil. And when users are searching for hair oil, they would write hair oil there, correct? So that is how we have built our auto search engine.
Sure.
Did I answer your question?
Oh yes, thank you so much. The second part, of course, was if you have ever thought about doing the search in local languages, since you mentioned about regional words, right? People search into Irodi or something like that in Kannada. So have you thought about or experimented with any local languages where people could type into their language, or Marathi or Hindi or Kannada?
Got it. So localization, you mean localization, right? Where the app could search on the characters entered in regional languages. We are getting there. I think that product will be launched this year. So, that was not in the first steps. We wanted to improve with whatever minimal things that we could do. But yeah, localization is the future and we are getting there. And that is how we will get the next billion users on Big Basket, right?
Great.
Yeah, so we are on the verge of it. And one more thing that we have introduced recently as part of the growth experiment is voice-based search, okay? And that works for regional terms. So even if you search, say, Iruli, you will see onion results. So till now you had to type that Iruli, and now we may not know the spelling correctly, right? But now we have also enabled voice-based search as an experiment. So I think some of you may be part of that growth experiment, and that is also working really well, especially for tier 2 cities and tier 3 cities. That is that is what is going to get us the next set of users.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. It's quite exciting. We do have a few questions from audience, and I'll pick some of them. So there's a question from Sharon Pillay. His question is there any way of showing more results above the fold without reducing product information in the search results? More results above the fold may lead to more conversion. That's a question.
Okay. Good question. See, if you look at Amazon search, right, it is extremely smart, I would say. Okay, so based on the query that you type, they populate the information. So when you search for rice, the amount of information that it shows is different than when you search for laptop. I mean, when you search for laptop, they show a lot of information in the search results page itself. Like they'll show you the brand, the specifications, like even the memory, that okay, 256 GB, and they even show you the processor. So based on the query, what Amazon does is they show, I mean, they put all of that information into that search, into that product deck. So I mean, Big Basket is not yet there, but I would say that if you can build that smart search, you can decide that okay, for rice, maybe the minimal things that I need to show is okay, the brand and the pack type, that is it, right? And maybe the type, okay, basmati rice or some other rice. But if you think about laptop, there is a huge amount of information that you can show. Again, you will have to see that what exactly is our customers looking for, even in the PD page. Are they looking for memory information, or are they looking for some graphic card information, right? So it depends on your website and the product. That's what I would say.
Sure. Thank you. There's another question from Sachish Sharma. He wants to know, how is availability part of the grocery item on the search page conveyed to the users? Don't you think alternatives shown should appear at the next stage? I think you talked about a little on this one. How do you show alternate? So his question is, don't you think alternatives should be shown, should appear on a next stage?
Yes, absolutely agree. Okay. But if you also think about it, the search results page, right? I mean, the listing page on the app, especially, you will probably see 2.5 decks. That's it. Now, we don't know if we have to fit in that similar products widget right there, correct? But the suggestion that you're giving is absolutely right. It could be a growth experiment where we would say that if the product deck is showing out of stock, maybe provide an option where the user can click and see similar products right there on the page. So we do that today once you go to the product description page, but on the search results page, it is not yet there. But yeah, I mean, it could be a growth experiment. We could definitely experiment that. And one more thing that we can do is, see, whenever we are showing the product deck with out of stock as a label, we could also show information that okay, will be available in 2 days, or will be available in 10 days. Now let's say you're buying a shampoo, for that matter, just saying out of stock and notify me may not be enough. Okay, I mean, we are learning all these lessons now. So what we are also planning to do is we will start showing okay, will be available in 2 days, or will be available in 10 days. So based on which the customer can make the decision, should I wait for 2 more days, or okay, if it is saying 10 days, I cannot wait for 10 days for the shampoo, I will probably buy somewhere else. So that is how we could also improve the out of stock case when it comes to search results page.
Great, thanks so much. There's another question. I will probably take one or two more.
Sure.
This one is from Abhishek P. His question is, isn't adding synonyms a double-edged sword, as it slows down the search results by a fraction, in addition to, of course, increasing the conversion?
Yes, it is. I totally agree. I mean, we have faced a lot of problems because of synonyms also. So, like you said, it is a double-edged sword. Because what also happened was we started adding synonyms, even though it is slightly the same thing. For example, juice and syrup, it kind of, or squash, these things are quite similar. Now, what happened was whenever someone searched for squash, the first results you're showing the squash results and syrup, followed by juice results. But eventually, what was happening was juice results started coming on top. Now, it also meant that whenever users searched for squash, we were showing a lot of juice products, right? So it is definitely a double-edged sword, and that is the reason you have to be very, very careful when you're adding synonyms. And of course, you cannot bombard the synonyms list. It should be very well thought through, right? Only when it is absolutely necessary, you will have to add synonyms, or otherwise you will have to find some other alternatives. So absolutely agree.
Right, great. So maybe one last question here, Bhavna. There are a
Yeah,
couple more, and then you can always go back to your LinkedIn page and answer some of them.
sure.
This one is from Ianu, okay, and his question is, which would you recommend, add to cart or a wish list or both, right? Because have seen people add to wish list but don't end up buying the product. So what would you recommend? Add to cart or add to wish list?
Right. Yeah. Good, tricky question, actually. See, I would say it depends on the kind of product that you're selling. Okay. I mean, that is the core. I would say that depending on the product, you will have to decide that. Correct. So, I mean, if at all you think that adding, like showing add to cart button on the Mintra page, maybe it could be a good growth experiment for you to do it. Okay. We we could do that actually. Maybe I would say add to cart. Add to cart is something which I will say, but only when your search is very smart. So if you look at Amazon, what it does is for grocery related pages, right? Be it your product listing pages or search pages. When it comes to grocery, they are showing add to basket button. But when it comes to laptop, iPhones, and all, they don't show you the add to basket button. So they're like super smart. Okay. So again, can I know the kind of products that you're selling so that I can suggest better whether we show at I mean whether we should show add to wish list or add to cart. So see, or maybe one more thing that I can say is if at all you think that people are adding to wish list but they're not actually buying, now the other way of how you can ensure that people do add from this point is show that list in the basket page also, right? So if you look at big basket page, what we have done is once you have added, let's say, 10 products in the basket, we also show save for later list, basically a wish list. So we also show all the wish list products there, so that when you're buying decision is made on other products, show these also telling that okay, you had wish listed all of this. Do you want to buy? Do you want to buy all of this? And Amazon also does it in a very brilliant way. So I mean, maybe you'll have to find alternate ways of how you can improve add to cart from your wish list. So I
Right.
think that's the answer.
Yes, sure. And Bhavna, by the way, you can always go back to the thread and the questions are available to you and answer
Sure,
them. And likely so, the audience can ask further detailed questions or queries about that.
sure.
Thank you so much for the fantastic session, Bhavna. I think everybody really enjoyed it. It
Okay,
was very insightful. And as a special token of appreciation from all of us at Product Leadership Festival 2020, hosted by the Institute of Product Leadership. Here is a virtual badge for you. The QR code takes you to your own dedicated Hall of Fame page. Please visit that on the Institute's webpage, of course. Once again, a big thank you and wish you a great or a happy weekend ahead. Thank you so much.
sure. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks everyone for joining the session. I will definitely answer all of your questions offline.
Great. That was
Thank
fantastic. So with that, I'd like to hand over, to Sai Satish Vedam. Thank you so much, audience, and please stay tuned. Exciting session coming up next. Over to you, Sai.
Thank you, Suresh. Thank you, Bhavna.
And thank you. Thank you so much.
Moving to the next session, we have two exciting keynotes coming up, one by Nirayal, the world famous author of Hooked and the Indestructible. As you can see on the screen, we have been quite excited about this session. And the next keynote is by Baiduria, Director of UX Design with ADP on the evolution of UX. And after that, we have a career panel too that traces the nuances of design career. Please stay with us through all these sessions. It is going to be very interesting, I promise. There will not be a break between the sessions. Before I hand this over to our host for the next session, please scan this QR code. You can find this URL on your chat window also. Please scan this and climb up the leadership board, the leaderboard. So the important thing is that you get, if you climb up the leaderboard, you get a one-on-one mentoring session with our speakers of the festival. How to go about that? Please scan this URL or check it out. And for the next session, please ask your questions on this particular LinkedIn thread. You can find it by scanning the QR code, or you can see the URL on your chat window. Now, moving on to the much awaited keynote. I'm very pleased to introduce and welcome Sai Satish Vedam, Executive Coach and Senior Faculty with the Institute, to host Nirayal. Most recently, Sai was Senior Director of Product Management at Oracle. Welcome, Sai. Very happy to have you with us. Over to you.
Well, thank you, Menaka. Hello, all who is continuing with us in the sessions. And for those of you who are joining us for this particular session, welcome, good evening. Hope wherever you are, you're safe and taking care of yourself. So we have a very exciting session right now. I'm particularly excited about this. Before we get into introducing our guest speaker today, for those of you who are joining right now, let me give a very brief overview of the organization that is being hosting and running these virtual conferences. Product Leadership Festival 2020 is hosted and run by Institute of Product Leadership. We just concluded a product edition, data edition, and we're running the design edition today. And today is the final day of the design edition. And thanks for all of you joining. I hope you're enjoying this and actionable insights from variety of excellent speakers, design leaders, product leaders, data leaders from across the globe. So with that, we can move on to the next session. But before, if you have either missed any of the sessions, or if you want to share any of the awesome sessions that just happened in the last two events and including this one, please refer this to this URL where you have a superbly indexed videos based on text extraction and some advanced technology where you can search on topics, go to your favorite part of the session that you have missed, and then consume that, right? So go ahead and do that. A little bit about the Institute of Product Leadership, started in 2012 in Silicon Valley, but more focused on India. IPL is an organization that with a singular mission of creating 10,000 product leaders in this country. To that effect, the Institute designs and delivers various programs to senior working professionals, technology managers, to help them move into career different roles within their organization, to career acceleration or career transition or even entrepreneurship. And IPL partners with various universities across the world and delivers these programs to corporates, to individuals. About 2,000 plus alumni have already gone through various programs of this globally with 220 companies. So with that, what you just witnessed before we started this session was an open conference, right? An open conference is, as part of the community building, community nurturing, product community especially, IPL has been building and nurturing a large group of product professionals in this country. And this time we invited speakers from the community to nominate themselves in the topics. And many of you got to vote, right? So there are lots of submissions. The top shortlisted one got the opportunity to speak, and it was incredible to see the community participation as well. So with that, I think, very important piece of information for this session. We already have Nirayal. Hi, Nir. Good to see you.
Hello.
Just give me 30 seconds before I, get onto this. So please ask your questions on the LinkedIn thread that is provided here. Just scan the QR code and it will directly take you to that LinkedIn thread, or the link would be posted on the chat. Now, there are several advantages of doing that, right? So, there is a lot of chatter on the Zoom chat and we may miss it, miss your important questions. So there is a team that is monitoring this LinkedIn thread and will be, I will be monitoring that as well and pick up the relevant and common questions, and we will ask Neer on them, and would also request Neer later when you get some time probably to answer some of them on the LinkedIn post, right? So that way, we want to continue this discussion, not just a transactional thing, it's an engagement, right? So once the Zoom session is ended, then all the Q&A is gone, right? So in order to prevent that, the best option is to use the LinkedIn thread. So with that, let me introduce you. Neer Ayal doesn't require an introduction, but I'll try my best a little bit. Now, it's every product manager's or designer's dream, and even a holy grail, if you will, to build a habit-forming products, right? And most of our product managers, and I've been a product manager for more than a decade and a half, and this has been the pursuit, right? The pursuit is to build such products that users or people use, love it, and come back to it, right? Now, we have right now amongst us the prophet of habit-forming products, as MIT Technology Review called him. And he is one of the most original and innovative thinkers of our time. And truly, I mean, if you look at his works, either his books or the articles or the talks that is given, it's incredible. And I think he's doing an amazing service to the product community as well as the people who are consuming these products. So Neer is also the, I'm sure many of you know, is world best-selling author of 2 books. One, of course, which got everybody excited a few years ago on Hooked and how to build habit-forming products. At least I was pretty excited after reading that book about 2013. Is that the right time, Neer?
2014, right?
2014, right. Yeah, right. And then, of course, more recently, the Indistractable, right? How to control your attention and choose your life, right? So I think, I'll get to a minute about the Indistractable. But before that, I think by understanding how the habit-forming products hook us and what makes them so habit-forming, we can do something about it, right? And that seems to be the premise or the overall theme. And I'm using the word seems to be because, Neer, I'll get to that in a minute. But let me complete the introduction here. So for this book, Neer was awarded the Outstanding Work of Literature Award. It's not every day or everyone who gets this incredible work. Best Business and Leadership Books by Amazon, and several other awards. If I start reeling out, we will run out of time, right? So Neer also consults and teaches pretty interestingly about intersection of psychology, technology, and business, right? And of course, he's also a practitioner. He co-founded 2 tech companies, sold them, and a very, very active investor in habit-forming technologies, right? Most of the companies, many of you have heard, Eventbrite, I'm sure many of you have heard, Anchor, which got acquired by Spotify, Refresh, which again got acquired by LinkedIn, Product Hunt. Anybody who's in the product space knows about Product Hunt. So thank you for being here, Neer. It's a pleasure and a privilege to welcome you. But before we get started, 2 very simple opening questions, right? If you can get that, and then please go ahead with your presentation. Sure. So while we discuss this, I would like us to understand today. I see a lot of people joining this. It'll be good for you and for us to understand what is the composition of the people that are joining, right? What are the backgrounds? And so if you can launch the poll that basically gets us that information. While that is happening, a quick question to you, Neer. What product are you hooked on right now? Or are you completely immune to that at the stage?
Yeah, so getting hooked can be a very good thing. It's very different from an addiction. So the book is called Hooked: How to Build Habit-Forming Products. It's not called How to Build Addictive Products. There's a big difference. A habit is a behavior done with little or no conscious thought, and it's something that can be very, very healthy for us, right? Getting hooked to exercise, hooked to learning, hooked to all sorts of things that we can form good habits around. And that's really why I do what I do. It's not to get people addicted. And addiction is a persistent compulsive dependency on a behavior or substance that harms the user. So I would never preach for people to addict anyone. That's not a good thing to do. We would never want to do that. That's unethical, in fact. What we want to do is to get people hooked through healthy habits through the products we use. And frankly, the fact of the matter is, if you've tuned in to the Product Leadership Festival, your problem is not addicting anyone. Let's face it. Very few people listening to me right now have a SaaS product that is addicting, and nobody's getting addicted to SaaS products. Nobody's getting addicted to educational products. Nobody's getting addicted to any of those things. The problem out there is not that a few companies have built the kind of products that get people addicted and suck them in. The real problem is that the vast majority of people making products out there are making products that suck, that people use because they feel like they have to, not because they want to. And so that's what we're going to talk about in this presentation, is how do we make these kind of products people want to use.
Super. I think somehow magically there seems to be some correlation here between what you're talking and the poll that came up. The poll that was to come up was to understand the audience, but it looks like that Nir is talking about hooked, and let's get a perspective on what people think the word hook means to them. And I don't know if what you're saying got influenced, people got influenced by that, but the reason why I'm bringing that up is culturally as well. The word hooked has slight negative connotations, right? And in some cultures, at least, at least casually in casual language that's used. But happy to see that many people here that's joining this conference believe it's positive, and which I believe was your singular intent of writing that book, of creating, changing people's behavior for the better. Right?
Exactly.
Okay, awesome. The second one that I had was quickly. Now, I apologize for this. I actually sat down 2 weeks ago to read Indestructible, right? And I got distracted and by many things, right? So it looks like this particular book was written just for people like me, right? Now, is that true?
Absolutely. It's for anyone who finds that there are all sorts of distractions out there, whether it's, of course, we sometimes tend to blame the latest technology, but things have been distracting us for a very, very long time. And people have complained about every new technology. People used to say what they say today about cell phones and Facebook, they used to say about the television and the radio and even the written word. Socrates, the great Greek philosopher, complained about how distracting the world was 2,500 years ago. So this is not a new problem. What I hope to do is to help people become indistractable by learning the Achilles heel of how distraction works and how we can put it in its place. So hopefully you can finish the book and you can learn yourself how to become indistractable.
No, I quickly realized that it was for people like me, and thanks for elaborating on that. So with that, please take it away, all yours, and would love to hear. And by the way, as you speak, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions, and we'll be monitoring that.
Sure.
Right?
So if you monitor them, that'd be fantastic. And then at the end, if you can just pick out your favorites, and then I'll ask you to ask those.
Absolutely.
Perfect. All right. So let me just share my screen here.
Yeah.
And can you just confirm for me that you see Hooked on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, beautiful. All right. Well, welcome everyone. It is so good to have you here. It's a pleasure to have you join me today. We have all seen what a profound impact these technologies that we're all carrying around with us in our pockets have on our day-to-day life. And so what we want to try and understand today is what can we learn from the patterns used to design some of the world's most habit-forming products. When you think of a habit-forming technology, what do you think about? You probably think of Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or Snapchat or TikTok. You think about these world-changing companies that somehow have changed the habits of millions of people, if not billions of users' lives, and of course, in the process are making millions, if not billions of dollars. So how do we do that? How do we learn from these companies and take the lesson, the psychology behind how these companies get people hooked so that we can use these techniques ourselves? When I wrote this book in 2014, this came out of a class that I taught for many years at the Stanford Graduate School of Business, and then later I taught at the Stanford the D School, the Hazel-Plattner Institute of Design. And when I taught this class, the goal of this class and this book is not to help the social media companies. It's not to help the video game companies. They already know everything in this book. My goal with this book was to help the rest of us, to help you build the kind of products and services that can build healthy habits in people's lives. And since the book was published back in 2014, it's sold 250,000 copies and it's been used in every conceivable industry to do exactly that, to help people form healthy habits. I'll give you a few examples real quick. Companies like Kahoot, the world's largest educational software, uses the hook model to get kids hooked to learning. Fitbod uses the hook model to get people hooked to exercise. Companies like New York Times use the hook model to get people hooked to engaging with their local news. So the goal of this presentation is to help all of you build the kind of products and services that people use because they want to, not because they have to. Imagine what your business could look like if you didn't have to spend all that money on expensive advertising and spammy messages. If people use the product that you're building that I and you both know could improve people's lives if they only use the product. How do we help build healthy habits in users' lives? That's what today is all about. And then we're going to take some questions quickly after the presentation. So make sure you have some questions throughout the presentation. Then we're going to pick out some of those to answer in a bit. So to kick this off, let's make sure that we're on the same page about what we mean when we use this word habit. What is a habit exactly? A habit is not an addiction, as we talked about earlier. That is not the same thing. People get them confused. They are completely different things. A habit is simply an impulse to do a behavior with little or no conscious thought. It turns out about half of what you do every single day, day in and day out, is done because of a habit. And this is a very, very good thing because, of course, habits can be used for good. We can help people live happier, healthier, more productive, more connected lives by helping them use our products as a habit. So how do we do it? What's the secret? What's the psychology behind how these companies like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and WhatsApp and Amazon and YouTube and Google, how do they get people hooked? Well, it turns out they use this model called the hooked model. The hooked model is defined as an experience designed to connect the user's problem to your product with enough frequency to form a habit. Let me say that again. Write this down if you can. A hook is an experience designed to connect the user's problem with your product with enough frequency to form a habit. And it's through successive cycles, through these hooks, through these 4 basic steps that I'm going to explain here in the next few minutes. This is how customers' tastes are shaped, how our habits are formed, and how we keep customers coming back on their own without expensive advertising and spammy marketing messages. This is how we build the kind of products and services people use out of habit. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk through these 4 basic steps so that you can understand what it takes to build a habit-forming product for yourself, to build healthy habits in users' lives. So step number 1 is the trigger phase. The trigger is a call to action. It tells us what to do next. Now, there are 2 types of triggers. The first type of trigger is what we call an external trigger. An external trigger is where there is some piece of information that tells the user what to do next. Something in our environment that gives us information for what to do. It can be a ping, a ding, a ring, anything in our outside environment that gives us information for what to do next, okay? Now, we in the product design community, we know all about these external triggers. This is what we do for a living, right? We design these external triggers to get people's attention. But what we don't understand, most of us, is that it's much more important not only to establish good external triggers, but in fact, it's more important if we are to form a habit to make sure that we can identify and build for what's called the internal trigger. An internal trigger is where the information for what to do next is not outside the user, but rather what to do next is stored as a piece of information, an association, a memory inside the user's own head. Now, what does this look like? Well, it can be being around certain people, partaking in certain routines, being in certain places, situations, and most frequently, when we experience certain emotions. Emotions are the most frequent internal triggers. Now, it's not only just any emotion that triggers these habits, but in fact, it's a certain type of emotion. It is in fact negative emotions. What we do when we're feeling bored or lonesome or indecisive or fatigued or discouraged or bored, what we do when we experience these negative emotions prompts us to action, makes us look for relief with some kind of product or service. Now, the way we know this is true is that we know, there's been several studies on this, but one of the most startling studies found that people with clinical depression check email more. Do you hear that right? People with clinical depression check email more. Why would that be? Why would people suffering from clinical depression check email more? It turns out that people suffering from clinical depression experience what we call negative valence states. They feel down more frequently than the rest of the population. And what are they doing to boost their mood to get out of that negative valence state? They're going online, they're checking their devices, they're looking at email more often than the rest of the population. Now, of course, you don't have to be clinically depressed for this to affect you. All of us do this to some degree. All of us partake in this. All of us use habit-forming products for one reason or another because of these negative emotions. Let me test you. Where do people go? Where do you go when you're feeling lonely? What app or website do you check? Well, maybe it's WhatsApp, maybe it's Facebook, right? A lot of people use this product when they're feeling lonely, when they're seeking connection. Here's another one. Where do we go when we're feeling unsure about something? Before you scan your brain to see if you know the answer to the question, you are Googling it, of course. And what about when you're feeling bored? You know, between 2 and 4 o'clock in the afternoon, there's that big project you don't want to work on right now. Where do you go to take your mind off of things? You check YouTube, you check the news, you look at sports scores, stock prices, Reddit, Pinterest. Lots and lots and lots of products and services cater to this uncomfortable emotional trigger of boredom. Now, what do we do with this? What's the lesson here that I'm trying to impart is that if you want to build a habit-forming product, you have got to be able to tell me, what is your customer's internal trigger? This is incredibly important. If you don't know your customer's internal trigger, you're just hoping to get lucky. And I'm not just talking about a functional level. I can't tell you how many of my clients I sit down with and I ask them, what's the internal trigger, right? What's the emotional itch that gets your customer to use this product out of habit, out of little or no conscious thought? Oh, they say, oh, we build this kind of product that, is an enterprise service software that does this. No, that's not the question. The question is, what is the psychological itch? Boredom, loneliness, fatigue, uncertainty. What is the feeling that your customer is trying to escape with sufficient frequency to form a habit around? You have got to be able to answer this question. It is absolutely critical. Let me give you an example, I think, of a company that did this particularly well, Instagram. Think about the first time you used Instagram. What were the external triggers? It's probably that you saw somebody post about it on Facebook or Twitter. Somebody posted a picture that said, hey, check out my photo on Instagram. They get you to install the app. Now you have an external trigger on your phone, right? That external trigger has a little notification that tells you every time somebody does something on the app, like they posted a picture or they mentioned you, that would be the external trigger. But what about the internal triggers? What are the internal triggers to using a product like Instagram? The internal trigger is that it solves the pain of losing the moment, right? That when you want to capture something and you want to keep it forever and you're afraid it's going to be gone, right? The internal trigger is the fear that that moment might be gone forever, right? When you take a picture of a beautiful sunset or a delicious food, a delicious plate of food, or your cute dog, it's not that your dog said, take a picture of me with Instagram. There's no external trigger that tells you what to do. And yet there's this spontaneous fear that if I don't capture this moment, it's gone forever. Incredibly powerful internal trigger. Now, what's so brilliant about Instagram is that it's much more than just the internal trigger of the fear of losing the moment. The more we pass through Instagram's hook, the more we begin to associate it with other internal triggers. When we're feeling bored, stressed, FOMO. What's FOMO? Fear of missing out. It's actually a real word in the Merriam-Webster dictionary. The fear of missing out is not only why we take pictures with Instagram, it's also why we keep going back to Instagram, because Instagram is not just a camera, it's a social network. It's a way to catch up with what's going on with our friends. And so that becomes an internal trigger through successive cycles that keeps us coming back again and again and again. Very powerful internal triggers that they use. So that's just the tip of the iceberg. I hope you'll check out my book. I hope you'll forgive me. I'm trying to cram, 10 years of research into about 30, 40 minutes here. But the point I want to leave you around these triggers is that you have got to understand on a psychological level, not just a functional level, what itch your product is scratching. What is the pain point, the psychological pain point that your product is trying to alleviate? Because if you cannot articulate it to me, you have very low chance of actually building a habit-forming product in this day and age. You're just hoping to get lucky. You've got to be able to articulate what is your customer's internal trigger. The next step is the action phase. The action phase is defined as the simplest behavior done in anticipation of a reward. The simplest thing the user can do to get relief from that psychological itch, right? So whether it's boredom or loneliness or fatigue or uncertainty, whatever it might be, what's the easiest thing that I can do to get relief from that discomfort? Now, I'm going to show you a few habit-forming products, and I want you to see how simple the action phase is in every one of these products. For example, scrolling on Pinterest, for example, how easy is that? Just that act of scrolling, or a quick search on Google, or what could be easier than just pushing the play button on YouTube? Very simple actions done in anticipation of a reward. Now, there's actually a formula that helps us predict the likelihood of any solitary behavior. And this comes to us from a researcher at Stanford by the name of BJ Fogg. And Dr. Fogg tells us that for any human behavior, offline, online, enterprise software, consumer web, mobile, doesn't matter. Any behavior requires three things. Every human behavior requires sufficient motivation. That's the M. Sufficient ability. Ability is how easy or difficult something is to do. And the T stands for trigger. We just talked all about triggers. So let's dive in for a little bit more detail around motivation and ability. Motivation, according to Edward Deci, the father of self-determination theory, he tells us that motivation is the energy for action, how much we want to do a particular behavior. And we know that all human beings on the face of the earth respond to these 6 factors of motivation. All of us seek pleasure, we avoid pain. We seek hope, we avoid fear. We seek social acceptance, and we avoid social rejection. So where we see this manifest is with advertising, right? The advertising industry, every billboard you see, every television commercial, every radio ad fundamentally uses one or more of these 6 levers of motivation to boost the energy for action. But of the 3 elements of behavior, motivation, ability, and a trigger, the most important after the trigger is not motivation, okay? It's much more important from a product design perspective to talk about ability, okay? Most people get this wrong, by the way. Most people in the product design community, they say, well, if people just knew how great our product was, if we just convinced them and showed them videos and testimonials, well, then they'll be more motivated to use our product. That is almost never the answer. The answer from a product design point of view is not to increase motivation, but instead to increase ability. What is ability? Ability is the capacity to do a particular action. It is how easy or difficult something is to do, because one truth that we have seen time and time again in the consumer psychology sphere is that the easier something is to do, the more likely people are to do it. That's common sense. The easier something is to do, the more likely people are to do it. So if you want your customer to do something, you have to make it easier to do. Well, what does that look like? Well, here again, we have these 6 levers of motivation, these 6 things that we can pull on to make a user more likely to take a particular action by increasing their ability. These factors of ability are time, how long something takes, how much money something costs, how much physical effort is required to do a particular behavior. Brain cycles. This is a big one, particularly when it comes to the product design community, because the harder something is to understand, this is called cognitive load. The more cognitive load, the more brain cycles, the more the customer has to think about what you're trying to get them to do, the more difficult it is for them to do the behavior and the less likely they are to do it. Social deviance says that we become more likely to do something when we see other people like us doing it. And finally, non-routine says that we become more likely to do something when we have done it before in the past. What is that called? That's called practice, right? The more we do something, the easier it gets, the more likely we are to do it in the future. So we can actually take these 3 basic features of motivation, ability, triggers, and we can put them on a conceptual graph. And if you haven't seen this before, please share this with your team, screenshot it. It's incredibly empowering. Because what Fogg's work tells us is that for any human behavior, if the customer, the user, is not doing what you've designed for them to do, let's say you've built a beautiful new app or an amazing new website, and darn it, People aren't doing what you've designed for them to do. Well, there are only 3 reasons why. Either they lack motivation, ability, or a trigger. Like we can see it right here in this graph. That only when the user has sufficient motivation, right, on the y-axis, high motivation, low motivation, and the user has sufficient ability. So if something is easy to do, it's on the far right. If something is hard to do, low ability, it's on the far left. And it's only when the user has sufficient ability and motivation that they cross that red threshold. And if and only if the trigger is present, if it's above that red threshold, if the trigger is present, the behavior will occur every time. Online, offline, enterprise, consumer, doesn't matter. Your behavior, your kid's behavior, your spouse's behavior, your customer's behavior, every click, every purchase always has to have sufficient amounts of motivation, ability, and a trigger. That is the only 3 reasons why customers don't do what you've designed for them to do. So now you know how to fix the problem. If a customer isn't doing what you've designed for them to do, if they're not taking the action, you know why. It's all about figuring out how to fix that problem once we have diagnosed where the illness is, so to speak. So let's make this very practical. I want to give you a very good example. I'm not sure if this company is in everyone's country who's tuning in, but this is a very large, I think the largest rental car company in the United States of America. It's called Enterprise Rent-A-Car. Now, Enterprise Rent-A-Car, their website, their homepage used to look like this. If you went to enterprise.com, it used to look like this. Now, ask yourself for a moment, what is the intended action? If you are Enterprise Rent-A-Car and you want people to rent cars from you, what is the intended behavior? What is the intended action you would want them to take on this page? Of course, it's to look up the availability of a car, right? Start renting the car. That is the behavior that the company and the customer wants to do. Look at all the stuff on this page that is not that, right? This is what we call distraction. It's all the things that are not what I want to do, right? And so what this did was increase cognitive load. The customer has to think, I just want to rent a car. How do I do that? And so what they saw was that all this distraction limits the action that both the company and the customer wants to take. So here's what they did. Here's what Enterprise Rent-A-Car's website looks like today. Look at this. You see the difference? This versus this. Why did they do that? They removed the cognitive clutter. They made it so much easier for people to do the thing that they want to do with your website. And I can't tell you how common of a problem this is, that people don't understand still in this day and age, that when you design a product, whether it's offline, online, enterprise, consumer, does not matter. Make the intended behavior as easy as possible to do. Increase ability to get more of the intended behavior. I know some of you are tuning in, you don't work in the internet space at all. Maybe some of you work with products and services that are physical goods. Well, this rule applies as well. No matter if it's online, offline, enterprise, consumer, doesn't matter. We always have to ask ourselves, what is in the user's way? Here's a great example of a physical product. Now, this company is called Show Pharmaceuticals, and they make vitamins. And they found that one of the biggest problems that they had with their customer base was that people didn't buy vitamins as frequently as they expected. And so they thought people were buying somebody else's vitamins, but that wasn't the case at all. When they interviewed their customers, they found that actually people loved Show vitamins. They just weren't taking them. And then they dug a little deeper and they found why. You paid money for these vitamins. Why aren't you taking them? And it turns out that people would just forget. They wouldn't get into the habit of taking their vitamins. So they dug even deeper. They did some more ethnographic research and they observed customers and learned the number one reason people weren't taking their vitamins was that they weren't visible. They would hide the vitamins in some drawer somewhere or some shelf, and they couldn't see them. The second reason that people didn't take their vitamins is that they couldn't remember whether they had taken them already. And so they didn't want to take too many. And so here's what they did. They put their vitamins, as opposed to all their competitors that make these ugly bottles that nobody wants to look at every day and they forget to take, they made these bottles that are meant to be displayed. They are meant to be put by your toothbrush. Why? Because you brush your teeth every morning. And so they put these products so that you put them upside down on this little stand right next to your toothbrush. Here's what else they did. In order to help people reduce the cognitive load and therefore increase their ability to take the intended behavior of taking their vitamins every morning, they built a dispenser that tells you whether you have taken the vitamin that day into the bottle. So when you take a vitamin, you snap it together, you squeeze it, a vitamin comes out, and it rotates to tell you, oh, you took your vitamins for Sunday, today is Monday, you won't need to take it again until Monday. Genius. They also, by the way, if you look at the pills, they're also very easy to swallow. They're much smaller. They figured that people actually can take more of these vitamins, or sorry, the same amount of vitamins if they took more pills in smaller, with smaller pills. So they thought of everything they could possibly do to increase ability, and therefore they were much more likely to get people to take the intended behavior, send them through the 4 steps of their hook, and form a consumer habit. Now, the third step of the hook. You guys ready for this? This is my favorite part of the hook model. The third part of the hook model, after we have figured out the internal trigger, after we have made the intended behavior as easy as possible to do, the next step of the hook model is the reward phase. The reward phase is where the user gets what they came for. It's where their itch is scratched. Now, if we are going to talk about rewards, we have to talk about the brain. And in particular, the area of the brain that we call the nucleus accumbens. The nucleus accumbens was first studied by 2 Canadian researchers back in the 1940s by the name of Olds and Milner. Now, Olds and Milner discovered that this area of the brain had some very peculiar properties. They noticed that when they implanted electrodes into the brains of lab animals and then gave these lab animals a little lever that they could push on, that sent an electrical jolt to this part of the brain, the lab animals in this study wanted to do nothing but activate this part of the brain. They could self-stimulate again and again. They would forgo food, water, they would run across painful electrified grids just to activate this part of the brain. Now, in later experiments done on people, what researchers observed that when people were given a little button to press on, and every time they pressed on this button, they would receive an electrical jolt to their own nucleus accumbens, they observed the same exact results. Some of the people in these studies had to have the machines forcibly removed from them to get them to stop activating their nucleus accumbens. Now, the good news is we do not have to implant electrodes in people's brains to activate their nucleus accumbens. Your nucleus accumbens is activated every single day with things like this: luxury goods, junk food, sex, certain chemicals, and of course, right there in the center, our technology. All of these things activate the reward center of the brain every single day. Now, for many years, Olds and Milner believed that the purpose of the nucleus accumbens was to stimulate pleasure, right? Isn't that why the lab animals wanted to incessantly activate the nucleus accumbens? Isn't this why we keep searching for all these things that make us feel good, right? Doesn't that make sense? Well, not exactly. It's actually a bit more nuanced than that. And there's a lot of misunderstanding about this. A lot of people think that, oh, the dopamine and the oxytocin, that's like cocaine in the brain. Not at all. That's not at all how these neurotransmitters work. It turns out what we now know that Olds and Milner never did is that the way the brain gets us to act is not by making us feel good per se. It's about stimulating the stress of desire, the wanting, the craving reflex. And the way we know this is that we can actually see what is happening in people's brains when they are anticipating a reward. Because as you can see here from this fMRI study, that the brain the nucleus accumbens that you can see there in yellow and red becomes most active in anticipation of a reward. But when we finally get the thing that we want, when we get the thing that we think is going to make us happy and make us feel good, when we finally get what we think is going to make us happy, that's when the nucleus accumbens becomes less active. So the way the brain gets us to act is not by making us feel good per se, it's by creating this itch that we seek to scratch, this wanting, this craving reflex. And I can tell you a way that you can supercharge your customer and users' stress of desire. In fact, I can tell you how to manufacture desire. Does anybody out there want to know how to manufacture desire? Are you curious how you can make desire out of thin air?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm doing it to you right now. So when I took that long pause and I didn't say anything for a minute and I asked you a question, some of you perked up. Why did he stop talking? What's he going to say next? What's the answer to the question? And that's exactly the point. What I just did to you was use what's called a variable reward. You see, the unknown is fascinating, and uncertainty, mystery, causes us to engage, it causes us to focus, and it is highly habit forming. Now, this research is a classic study that came to us from the work of B.F. Skinner, the father of operant conditioning. He took these pigeons, he put them into a little box, and he gave them a little disc to peck at. And he taught the pigeons to peck at the disc whenever they were hungry. By the way, the hunger was the internal trigger, right? That was the itch. If the pigeons were well fed, they did not do anything, right? They were happily going about their business. But if the pigeon was hungry, if there was an internal trigger, he could train the pigeon to peck at the disc to get a reward. In this case, he gave them a little food pellet. He gave them a little reward. Now, everything went great. And this is what you can expect, when you train your puppy or train your kids. This is called operant conditioning. Do this, get that, right? We've all seen this before in real life. But then something very interesting happened. You see, one day, Skinner ran out of these food pellets. He didn't have enough of these rewards for his pigeons. And so he had a problem. He couldn't afford to give it to the pigeons every day. He could only afford to give it to the pigeon once in a while. So sometimes the pigeon would peck at the disc, no food pellet, nothing would come out. The next time the pigeon would peck at the disc, they would receive a reward. And what Skinner observed, to his amazement, was that the rate of response, the number of times the pigeon pecked at the disc, increased when the reward was given on a variable schedule of reinforcement. Why does this happen? Because variability activates the nucleus accumbens, creating this desirous response, activating the wanting reflex. And so in all sorts of products that we find most engaging, most habit forming, the things that capture your attention and won't let go, you will always find one or more of these three types of variable rewards: rewards of the tribe, rewards of the hunt, and rewards of the self. Let me introduce these to you briefly. Rewards of the tribe are all about the search for social reward, things that feel good, that have this element of variability, but come from other people. The search for empathetic joy, feeling good because someone else feels good, partnership, cooperation, competition, all of these things feel good, have this element of variability, and come from other people. Best example online is social media. Of course, when you go on to Facebook or Instagram or WhatsApp or TikTok, you're always uncertain about what you might see. What did people post? What do the comments say? How many likes does something get? High degree of variability involving our social networks. The next type of variable reward is what we call rewards of the hunt. Rewards of the hunt are all about the search for resources. And this, of course, comes from our primal search for material possessions. But in modern society, we buy these things with money. And so when many people think about variable rewards, the classic example is a slot machine, right? When you go gamble, what keeps us engaged with one of these games of chance is the uncertainty around what we might win, the money that you might get by playing blackjack or pulling on a slot machine. Interestingly enough, we see the exact same psychology at work online. If you think about for a minute the feed, what is it about the feed? Have you noticed how everything mobile has a feed these days? Why is that? Why does everything today have a feed? Take a look at LinkedIn, for example, right? LinkedIn was bought by Microsoft a few years ago. What is it about the LinkedIn feed that makes it so enchanting? Well, when you log into LinkedIn, Maybe the first story is not that interesting. The second story is not that interesting. But maybe the third or fourth story is interesting. And what do you have to do to see more interesting content? You just have to scroll. And that scrolling and scrolling and scrolling uses the exact same behavior as pulling on a slot machine. It's all about the variable rewards of the hunt for information, searching and searching and never done searching for that next reward. The next type of variable reward is what we call rewards of the self. Rewards of the self are things that feel good, that have this element of variability, but don't come from other people and aren't about the search for any kind of material possessions. These are things that feel good in and of themselves. They are intrinsically pleasurable. The best example online is, of course, gameplay. When someone plays Animal Crossing or Angry Birds or whatever other game they might play online, they're not necessarily playing with other people. They're not even winning anything in terms of material possessions, but there's something fun and exciting about getting to the next level, the next accomplishment, the next achievement. And so even if you don't play one of these games, I know everybody here, we're all very serious business people, right? None of us play these online games, do we? Well, even if you don't, I bet you play this game every single day. Let me know if this looks familiar. How about your email? This is a game you play probably every single day. If if you're like most people, email is probably the mother of habit forming technology because there's all these variable rewards where that need to check that unread message. What's in it? Is it good news? Is it bad news? Who's it from? Clearing your inbox, finishing the to-dos on your to-do list. All of these things are about the search for mastery, consistency, competency, and control. So the idea here behind the variable rewards phase is to give people what they want, to scratch their itch, and yet leave them wanting more. This is not about cheesy gamification. It's not about points and badges and leaderboard. That stuff almost never works. It's about scratching people's psychological itch. And back to the internal trigger phase, this is why it's so important to start by understanding what is your user's internal trigger. If the internal trigger is uncertainty, we have to give people assurance. If the internal trigger is loneliness, well, then we have to connect people together. The point of the variable reward phase, it's not some sort of gimmick. It's about giving people what they need. It's about giving them whatever it is they came to your product for in the first place, and yet leaving a bit of uncertainty around what they might find next time they engage with the product or service. Finally, the last step of the hook model is the investment phase. The investment phase is where the user puts something into the product to increase the likelihood of the next pass through the hook. And investments do this in two ways. The first way that investments increase the likelihood of the next pass through the hook is by loading the next trigger. Loading the next trigger. Loading the next trigger is when something you do in the investment phase gets you to load the next trigger so the customer comes back on their own, not some piece of spammy messaging or marketing that you send the user, but something that I did to bring myself back. Let me give you a great example. When you send someone a message on WhatsApp, you don't get any kind of immediate reward. What's the immediate gratification of sending someone a message? There's no points, there's no badges, nothing happens when you send someone a message, unless you get a reply. So every time you invest in the platform, you are loading the next trigger because every one of those replies comes coupled with, what is that an example of that you see on your screen right now? What is that notification, that meatball icon an example of? That is an example of an external trigger. This is where we began the whole presentation, an external trigger that prompts you through the hook once again. So the first way that investments increase the likelihood of the next pass of the hook is by loading the next trigger to bring the customer back based on their own volition, something that I did to bring me back again through the hook. The other way that investments increase the likelihood of the next pass through the hook is by storing value. Now, this is a really, really big deal. This is a revolution in the way that products are built, in that investments can store value in the product the more it is used. This is a really revolutionary idea, because if you think about it, everything in the physical world, all physical products, they depreciate with wear and tear. right? When you use, your furniture, your clothing, everything that you use in the physical world that's made out of atoms rather than bits, it depreciates, it loses value with wear and tear. But habit forming products do the opposite. They appreciate, they get better and better the more they are used. What does this look like? Content, for example, is one form of stored value. The more content you upload to Google Drive or Dropbox, the better it becomes as your cloud storage solution, the more valuable it becomes to you. The more data you give a company, for example, Mint.com or personal finance software, Pinterest, Facebook, any of these companies, the more data you give them, you are building the product in real time just for you. So if you were to log into my Pinterest account, my Instagram account, my Facebook, it wouldn't be interesting to you because it's been customized based on my data that I gave the company that customizes the product just for me. Followers is another form of investment that increases with use. The more followers someone has, the better the product is as a way to reach their audience. So if, let's say you had two different kinds of people, someone with 10,000 followers and someone with 10 followers. Now, let's say that Twitter one day decides that they're going to start charging people to use Twitter. You have to pay to use Twitter. Who do you think is more likely to pay Twitter? Would it be someone with 10 followers or someone with 10,000 followers? Obviously, it would be the person with 10,000 followers because they've stored more value in the product in their form of their follower count. Finally, reputation. Reputation is a form of stored value that users can literally take to the bank because my reputation on products like Upwork and eBay and Airbnb dictates what I can charge for my various goods and services. And so that's a form of stored value that I get paid more for based on my reputation, even if a better product comes along. Imagine if there's another competitor to eBay or Upwork and Airbnb, but you're on these platforms and you already have a great reputation. How likely are you to stop using those products after you've built this amazing reputation? It's kind of hard to do, right? It's kind of sticky. It's kind of tough to leave once you've made this investment in the product in the form of your reputation score. So that's it. The 4 parts of the hook model: the trigger, the action, the reward, and the investment. These are the 4 steps that help people form habits with your product and service. This is how customer preferences are shaped. These are how our habits take hold. And it's through successive cycles, through these steps, and with these 5 basic questions. And I invite you to take a picture of this This is the most important slide of the presentation. The hooked canvas teaches us how to ask these 5 fundamental questions if we are building a habit forming product. Number 1, what is the internal trigger that the product is addressing? Number 2, what's the external trigger that prompts us to action? Number 3, what is the simplest behavior done in anticipation of reward? Is the reward fulfilling and yet leaves the user wanting more? And then finally, what is the bit of work done to increase the likelihood of the next pass through the hook? Now, before I take some questions, there is one more topic I'd like to address, which is the morality of manipulation. You see, many people, when they understand how these products are designed to change user behavior, and then they start thinking about using it in their own business, they kind of take a pause and they say, well, is that ethical? Is it okay to use people's hidden psychology to get them to do what we want to do? And if you had that reaction, I say bravo. That is exactly the humane response to understanding the power that we have to change people's behavior. And so what I implore you to do is to understand that you have a very special responsibility, because product design is manipulation. What you do for a living, if you are a product designer, is you are manipulating people's behavior. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes we want to be manipulated. We want products to help us exercise, be more productive, connect with loved ones, save money. We want that to happen. But we have to understand that we have a very special and powerful responsibility to make sure that we use these techniques appropriately. Because many of these products that we use, this is what people take to bed with them every night. It's the first thing we reach for in the morning before we even say hello to our loved ones. And so we have to ask ourselves, what special responsibility do we have? And so what I implore you to do is to use these techniques to help people find something meaningful, something important, to use it in a way to help people solve these common human problems. And I believe that we have a very special opportunity to use behavioral design and habit formation for good, to help people build happier, healthier, more productive lives, and to borrow and take liberties from the words of Gandhi to help build the change that you want to see in the world. And with that, thank you so much for your attention. I appreciate it. I have a quick favor to ask before we go to questions, which is I would love to hear what you thought of the presentation. I know many people asked me for the slides that I just presented, and I'm happy to give those to you. If you would be so kind to go to this URL, opinion2.us. If you have an iPhone, you can just point at the screen at that QR code, and it'll take you to that URL. There's a very short survey there. It's only 5 questions. Would love to know what you thought of the presentation. I read every one of your comments. If you have any questions in particular you want to address, I'll look at every one of those. Would love to know what you thought of the presentation. If you would be so kind as to fill out that survey, when you click submit, you will get a link to my SlideShare page where you can have all the slides you just saw. You can share them with your colleagues, keep them, do whatever you like. We have a few minutes for questions. If I don't get to your question, please do visit me on my website, neerandfar.com. You can see it there at the bottom. Neer is spelled like my first name, neerandfar.com. You can fill out a contact form there. If I don't get to your question today, happy to answer those questions later on. And with that, let's dive into some questions.
Well, totally fascinating. Awesome. Thank you so much, Neer. And I think there are questions pouring in, but I've been trying to take notes and quickly summarize what you just said before we get to the questions, right? You started off with the habit and the hook model and what that definition is, moved on to the hooked canvas in the 4 stages of it, the triggers, the actions, and in the triggers, you talked about internal and external triggers. Now, external triggers are something that are obvious to many people, but internal are the ones that we need to figure out in the right moment and the right stage. Of course, a lot of negative emotions involved in there. And then, moving on to the reward stage, which has variable rewards. I think fascinating. You brought in various behavioral theories and cognitive models that many others have propounded, and connected that with some really good examples for us to understand how products are using those to leverage and make them better, especially the show one, the enterprise one, and of course, the ubiquitous badges that we are all bombarded with. And then, of course, spending time on investment aspect of it, loading the next trigger, and the most important one is stored value, right? So if the product gets better as you use, either it's a network effect or it is the data that you're giving, which increases the value of that product. And I'm glad that you brought up this morality of manipulation, because often when people come to understand this power, it requires a lot of responsibility to use it properly for the good, right? I'm glad that you brought it up. So few questions, let me just go over them. And for those of you who still have questions, please go ahead and ask them in the LinkedIn thread. And I'm sure when Neer gets time, we'll do that. So questions from, let's say, Mario Hanmant, particularly are asking, is there a same approach or a slightly different approach to identifying these internal triggers for enterprise applications? Now, most of the examples that we saw were for consumers and B2C individuals, but what about the enterprise apps?
Yeah, sorry, let me just do this one thing. I realized I wanted to add the URLs for the survey. Here it is again, sorry. And my blog, I just added it to the chat as well. If you could add that to LinkedIn as well, that'd be great. Awesome. So in terms of enterprise versus consumer, now, the presentation, I didn't have time to cover both consumer and enterprise, but the fact of the matter is it's not important. There is no distinction between habits that are formed, the model for forming habits between enterprise and consumer web. It is exactly the same. It's the same 4 steps of trigger, action, reward, and investment. You have to follow the exact same 4 steps. The only difference is, of course, that the internal triggers will be different, right? A consumer web product that addresses loneliness and seeking connection is not the same type of internal trigger for an enterprise software that might cater to uncertainty or stress in the workplace. So the same basic 4 steps apply. In fact, if you go ahead and fill out that survey and go to my SlideShare page, there is a presentation there that's called Hooked in the Enterprise. If you scroll down on the right-hand side, you'll see a bunch of presentations. One of them is called Hooked in the Enterprise. It is the exact same model, the same 4 steps, but instead of presenting Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, it's presenting Salesforce and GitHub and Slack, right? It's all enterprise software. And in fact, I would argue that habits in enterprise software are more important than even consumer products, because if your product is the kind of product that's purchased monthly, right? If it's a SaaS product, if a customer looks at the bill every month, right? You can argue that with a consumer web product, many consumer web products you don't pay for. You're not paying for Instagram with cash. You're not paying for Facebook with cash. But an enterprise product, somebody is getting a bill every month. And if they look at that bill and say, what the heck is this software? Is anybody using this around here? And the answer is no, you're a goner. They're not going to pay because they don't use it. They're not getting value from it. So it's even more important, I think, in the enterprise space to make sure that your product does form a habit if it's used with sufficient frequency.
Great. So a follow-up question on that, I think Gautam and a couple of others are asking is, typically enterprise products focus on solving a particular problem, more functional needs, if you will, right? And so is it worth, or is it, the approach that you explained, is it even important to address the other triggers that you just explained and all of that?
Well, so not every product needs to be habit forming. I want to be very clear. This is not some magic pixie dust that every business, sprinkles on it and becomes the next Facebook or Salesforce. That it's only for a certain type of product. It's for a type of product that is used with sufficient frequency. That's, that was part of the definition of what is a hook. It's connecting your user's problem to your product with enough frequency to form a habit. That was the definition I shared earlier. So many products are not used frequently, right? If you're building some kind of server-side software that's not used unless something breaks, that you don't have to form a habit. You sell it once and you forget it. That's it. The problem with those type of products is that you have to have some kind of other competitive advantage. A habit is one of many competitive advantages. There are many others: intellectual property, brand, economies of scale, network effects. There's many other competitive advantages. Habits are one of many. The problem is, if you don't have one of those competitive advantages and you don't have a habit, you are constantly beating each other up on price and features. So for example, take insurance, okay? Car insurance, home insurance, that's not going to become a habit. Nobody uses car insurance habitually, right? You only use it, God forbid, if something terrible happens, that's when you use car insurance. So it's never going to become a habit. So the problem is that one company says, oh, your rate is this. The other company says, oh yeah, well, our rate is that minus $2. And so you compete on price and features and price and features. And so you don't have any kind of excess return. And so you have to have some kind of competitive advantage. And I think habit is one of the ones that more companies than realize it can access. You can also bolt on habit forming products. So for example, the rise of content marketing is all about bolting on the habit of consuming content as a habit around a product that is not necessarily itself habit forming. So a content consumption habit. A community habit is something that you can form around the product. So the result of that engagement is eventual monetization. And there's an article on my blog where I talk about exactly this, about what do you do with the product that's not used frequently enough, right? Or how do you build a product for a product how do you build a habit for a product that isn't used with sufficient frequency? It's on my blog as well. Happy to share that.
Well, super. I think that also answered a couple of questions from 2 other folks who are talking about, is creating low prices, discounts, the only way to create habit forming products for
that's the worst way to create habits. Discounts,
not a sustainable way at all.
Please listen. Discounts and coupons and gimmicks are the worst way to create habits. They create short-term engagements, but what you are doing is that you are looking for the worst kind of customer. You're looking for a customer that doesn't like to pay full price, right? So you're finding them, you're pulling them to you, and you're training the rest of your customer base to expect constant discounts. There's a brand, I don't think they're in every country, but there's a brand in the United States called Bed Bath & Beyond. And Bed Bath & Beyond got into this habit of mailing discounts to people. So that today, if you shop there without one of these coupons, they send them so frequently, you're an idiot, right? Like everybody knows you do not shop at Bed Bath & Beyond without a 20% discount. And so they've trained their customers to expect constant discounts. And that's what they do. They wait to buy until they have a coupon. So price is one type of incentive. It's actually the worst kind. Of the 3 types of variable rewards, tribe, hunt, and self, a discount, a coupon is rewards of the hunt, right? It's about some kind of material possession. But let me tell you, rewards of the tribe and rewards of the self are much more long lasting and they cost you nothing. So explore those as well.
Well, awesome. I think that summarizes it. We have several of them, but in the interest of time, actually, there's one particularly interesting one, which as a quote from you said, "In being indistractable is a new skill set." So, I think, that's a motivation enough for folks here to actually go and look at your next book, the new book, Indistractable, and see how you explain that. So thank you so much, Neer. Appreciate your time. But before you just go away, request all the folks to give your feedback on the poll that shows up. And also would like to, give the virtual token of appreciation from all of us, Neer. This is, you'll see that quickly in your email, but scan the QR code when you get it, and you will be on our Hall of Fame on the Institute's website. Truly appreciate you taking the time out and giving us these insights. Thank you so much.
Wonderful, my pleasure. I'm taking a picture of it right now.
Yes, please. And you are on the Hall of Fame of the Institute's website. Appreciate
Wonderful. Thank you. It was a pleasure, everyone. Thank you.
Bye. Over to you, Menaka. Thank you so much.
Wow, thank you, Sai. Thank you, Nir. I'm absolutely hooked. Thank you so much for the session. We hope to work with you again.
Yeah.
Great. So for the best question asked, we have a winner. We will reach out to you and you will get your gift very soon. Please send us your testimonials. Please scan this QR code and send us your testimonials and again win rewards. And congratulations, Mario. You are the winner. You are the winner for the question asked, the best question asked today. Congratulations. We will reach out to you. And please scan this QR code again, so you can get a one-on-one session, mentoring session with our speakers by referring your colleagues and friends to this festival and thus climbing up the leaderboard. Now we are going to move on to the next session. So before I move on to the next session, please keep this URL ready with you so that anytime there is a very interesting topic and you want to ask a question, you can use it immediately and we can ask. It is a pleasure to welcome and host Vaidurya Sinha, popularly known as Tatan. He has proven expertise on a spectrum of roles such as UX designer, researcher, business design, etc. Currently, he serves as director of UX design at ADP. He loves painting, reading books, and sci-fi movies, etc. Welcome, Tatan. The show is all yours.
Thanks, Menka. Let me start my video. I hope you can see me. And let me start sharing something.
Sure.
Okay, so are you able to see my presentation screen in full screen mode?
Not yet. Have you shared it?
Yes.
We are not able to see it yet.
Okay. It gives me two options to share. I think
Yeah, you can share screen.
I've done share screen. It's showing green here, but shall I do? Are you guys able to see?
So maybe you can open the browser, come back and share the screen.
Okay, I'm using the app, so I will
Okay.
disconnect.
Please stay with us. We will be starting the session soon. We can see now. You can go on full screen.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. Thanks for the nice introduction, Menka, and good evening and good morning to different folks in different parts of the world. So in this presentation, I will quickly go through evolution of UX and specifically focus on the types of evolving organizations and the type of careers. Without wasting much time, let's move on. So what we'll see in this presentation will cover 4 parts, actually: how the UX has evolved over time and what is the predicted growth of UX. Overall, what is the UX organization and structures in this complex world of UX, because UX is growing as a profession. So the complex structures are existing in large enterprise organizations. And then what are the future trends and the UX skills that will be required to be acquired in the future with the changing world and the changing environment. And last, for very small amount of time, we'll quickly touch on UX interviews, basically for the folks who are new to UX as a career. And after this session, what I understand, there is also a career session. So maybe in that session, people will discuss in details. So let's look what the evolution of UX is, right? So when was the UX design was given name? So it was in 1995 by Donald Norman. But if you see, some form of UX existed from 4000 BC, right? So there was some notion of UX, but the name, the UX was given in 1995, right? So moving on to the next slide, let's look at how the UX has grown over years and how it is predicted to grow in the next few years. So this is data from Nelson and Norman group. So the left side graph is a logarithmic scale and the right side is a normal scale graph. So if you see this graph from 1950 to 1983, so it grew from about 10 people, mainly in the Bell Labs, to around 1,000 people. So the growth factor was around 100. From 1983 to 2017, it grew around with a factor of 1,000 to 1 million people. And from 2017 to 2050, the predicted growth is with a factor of 100, which is around 100 million people. So if you see the right side of the graph, it is like a exponential growth. So for the people who has questions about how UX is there as a career in future, it's going nowhere. It's going to grow much more in size. So let's look at key historic events which led to the evolution of UX, right? So one is the PC revolution, right? So from 1980 to 2000, the birth of the Mac and the birth of the Windows. So this boosted the growth of UX with a lot of GUI interfaces that came into the picture, right? In web revolution from 1989 with the birth of internet and then HTML in 1993, it became much more with a lot of this web interfaces, and Web 3.0 in 2006, where a lot of different functionalities were added to the web capability. So a lot of this web application came into being, right? And the next boost was with the mobile revolution from 1993, and it's still going on. But the first mobile app, which was built by IBM in 1993, mostly it was around productivity kind of apps. And then the birth of iPhone, as we all know, in 2007, where you could directly have a touch screen and directly manipulate the things. And after that, nowadays there is a kind of a burst of so many apps. Everything is like an app nowadays, right? So I would pause few seconds and ask this question. If you guys can paste on the chat, like, what do you feel? Like, UX is an art or science, or is it a business? And if you guys can type on the chat. Okay. So I think a lot of people are saying it's a combination of all three. Some people are saying it's an art, and some people are saying it's a science. Okay, so look, let's look at what UX is, and I think a lot of folks have said it is a combination of all three. So let's see. Yes, it is a combination of all three, and the folks who have said it's very correct. So design can be an art, right? So you build a artifact or some clay model or some other kind of design, which is an art, right? But it is not necessary that that art has to sell. So there might not be any business value attached to it, right? But if you are building any user experience, actually at the end of the day, you are solving users' problem and try to also create a business value. So any user experience which does not have any business value is like an art. But also, to build user experience, you have to understand a lot of science and technology, right? So you have to understand user behavior, cognitive sciences, and you also have to apply technology to create those kind of experience to solve user problems. So user experience is a combination of art, science, and business. So a lot of folks thought UX as an art historically, but UX is not an art. Maybe design can be an art, and design can be anything. Design is a very broad term, right? Anything can be design, or maybe fine arts can be art, but UX is a combination of art, science, and business. So let's quickly look at how the UX roles have evolved over time, right? And there is no direction to read this diagram. It's just like a role cloud. So we have this graphic artist kind of people who do a lot of this graphic arts that has been there as a profession. From there, there has been one field which was called communication designers, and then there are visual designers who evolved. Some folks became UI designers as a role, and then with the evolution of web, they became web designers, and some of them did design and development and web developers. The other side of things is, a lot of people became industrial designers who grew to be usability engineers, and a lot of companies used to call human factors. So these are the guys who started with the industrial revolution, with the designing of machines, design of different objects, and maybe as simple as designing of chairs and all those ergonomics and all those things. And then with the evolution of web, information architect was also a role some of you who has been in this industry for 15 plus years might have seen. Like, some people had this title called information architects, and then somewhere the UX designer term came into being, right? So then a lot of interactions came into place, and the term interaction design was more popular. Still, UX designer is the broader term now. And then then there is other profession that came into being, which was there from long time, is copywriter, mostly focused around the book kind of thing, right, where they used to write a lot of contents for the book. And after that, when the web came, they used to write content for the web, content writer. And then now a lot of them has moved to UX writer. And there is a combination somewhere between UX design, interaction design, and UX writing, and becoming something like conversational design. On the other hand, you see like people in the systems, they became system designer who understood. These were the folks who started designing from the ERP world, understanding very complex distributed systems. And then, they combine to become service designer, where you look at end-to-end, journey of the users, right? End-to-end client experience. And then, the business strategies merged with UX design and formed a business designer. And a lot of this is an upcoming profession, and a lot of people in some of the organizations have titles like this business designer or venture designer. and UX research, obviously, and then product research, and now generative research. So you see a gamut of roles which has evolved, combined, and to form new roles as per required in the industry. And the titles has also been evolving with time. So next, what we'll see is, in this current complex world, what are the UX organization structures that are existing? Mostly, as you work in large enterprise, it becomes very, very complex. Like you have multiple business units, you have multiple product groups, and even each groups you have multiple products. So the challenge is, how to do domain-specific innovation within the product, so which is deep related to that particular product or that domain, because a company might also work in multiple domains, by the way. And also to maintain consistency across the product, and also look at the big picture where a user is using multiple of your products. So, so few broad structure that are predominant, and you can categorize these different models in three basic structure. Maybe people can come up with more names, but broadly you can categorize in three basic structure. One is a centralized model. We'll look into the details of each of this, a distributed model, and a hybrid model. So before we move into the details of each model, let's look what is needed for creating a product. So I think this diagram is very popular, and I think everybody have seen this diagram for once in their career. But so it says about what is needed for a product, right? As we look at UX, now let's look at product. Like product has to be desirable. Like what are your user needs? Because at the end of the day, you are trying to solve problems for the user. It has to be viable. It has to have a business value. Without the business value, if you have a product which doesn't sell, doesn't make any difference, right? And it has to be feasible. The available technology has to be available to create those desirable experience and that support the business requirements, right? And who are the key roles that are required to create this kind of experience are basically the three roles, like user experience, product manager, and development lead. That doesn't mean that there cannot be more roles. People from service, people from sales and marketing can also come in the product innovation group. But basically, these three skills are required. So user experience, people does the desirable, business needs is the viable, which is done by the product manager, and the feasible and the technical capability is done by the development lead. And this together is called a triad. And the triads can be layered. What do I mean by that? For a complex organization, triads can exist at different levels altogether, right? There can be a triad at a squad level. And I think in the first day presentation from Adam, we looked a little bit about the squad. So it's like, the cross-functional team who is responsible for a part, product, or a feature. And triad can also be there at a guild level. We'll look at what a guild is. Triads can there be also at an executive level, like a chief user experience officer, chief product officer, and chief technology. But that can also be triad. And the triads at different level maintain health, the consistency across different, and also to look at the bigger picture. So the leadership triads are focused on the bigger picture, right? How it works across different products, across different business units. Moving on to the next slide, we just spoke about squad, and in the first presentation, I think you guys already learned a lot about squads. But typically, the word squads come from military, right? Most of the team structures, organization, most of these things comes from military. So you have a product manager, typically one, a UX team maybe typically two, and depends from organization to organization. The ratio might not be same in all the organization. And then development team around 6 to 7. So this is considered a group of around 6 to 10 members who are very tightly integrated and as a cross-functional team responsible for innovation. And they use normally design sprints to do the product discovery, and for delivery, normally agile is followed. And they're also responsible for measuring the success of their product. Typical roles in the squad, and when I say roles, these are roles. There might not be always one person for each of these roles. One person may also play multiple roles. So it's like a squad lead sometimes if you have a larger team of UX, and maybe a UX designer who is dedicated. UX researcher may be dedicated if the size of the product is bigger, or it might be shared across multiple products. There might be a UX writer who is responsible for writing a lot of this messages, within the product and guides, on product guides and all those things. And finally, the UX developer or the UI developer are part of the squad. So let's let's move what a tribe is. And for larger organizations, there might be multiple squads, and then the squads need to be brought together under some leadership so that there is a consistency maintained across the squads. Say, for example, each of the squads is responsible for a part of the product, but when the user is using the product, needs to be looked as a whole. So you normally have a UX tribe leader, which might be a UX director, depend from organization to organization. You might have a dev tribe leader, like a dev director and a product director at that level, right? Now, for more complex organizations, which grows bigger in size and very enterprise kind of organization, where there are a lot of these teams in this group. So you might have multiple tribes, right? And within each tribe, you will have a lot of squad teams. So each tribe either may be responsible for a product group, or they might be responsible for a business unit altogether, the business vertical altogether, depending on how the organization is set up. And still there is a need to have consistency within the tribes. Say, for example, if your customer is using multiple products, right? Let's say, for example, your customer is using multiple products within the Salesforce, then there needs to be consistency across the experience of different products within the Salesforce, right? Like a purchase module or some other module. And for our company like ADP, we have small business, medium business, large business, international business, and we also have similar kind of modules. Maybe like payroll might require consistency for small and medium business, large business, international business. So that is called as a guild, which is a vertical, right? And the guild is responsible for all the common activities across different tribes. And the guild can also have a guild UX leader, guild product leader, and a guild dev leader. And the other roles that are there in the guild are like generative researcher. Generative researcher is a role which is a little different from product research in the sense that they do a lot of upfront research to figure out different trends, business trend, market trends, user trends, like maybe what would be the future of work, or some future of how the payment world is changing. So these kind of research actually will feed into creating the business goals and the roadmaps where we need to focus our business. And because with the changing user behavior, this is very important to focus on the business. And there might also be a guild which is looking at the entire user journey, right? A user journey might cut across multiple products. So the guild is responsible for looking at the user journey across multiple products. Say, for example, if you have a buyer experience in e-commerce, right? So there might be different product groups like electronics, and then so many, right? But the buyer experience is something which cuts across products. Same for any ERP, CRM, or any big applications where the users are using multiple of your applications. The same persona might use multiple of your applications. Moving on to the next slide. And the guilds can also be like a design system guild. For the folks who I think most of the folks understand design system nowadays, but for the folks who have not heard about it, this is the common language, design patterns, voice and tone, accessibility standards, which is supposed to be an umbrella guideline to be used by all products in a company. And there are web components, mobile UI components, and SDKs. To give an example, which is more popular, maybe your material design is a kind of design system, right? And there are a few key roles in a design system which are very important, like interaction design, UX developer, a brand and visual creative to align it to the brand guidelines, a voice and tone, which is also very important, and accessibility standards. So there might be few persons who are playing these roles, or there might be each dedicated person for each who are specialists in each of these roles. Now, going back to see what a centralized team looks like, and this is one of the oldest model, and a lot of startups have been also working in the early days in this model. So it's so UX team works like a central agency, and there is a resource pool. So the projects comes to the UX group, and the resource is kind of loaned to that particular squad. And for the time period of the project runs, that person is dedicated to that squad. But after the project is over, the person again moves back to the resource pool. So how does this help? So this helps in maintaining the big picture, right? Because all the UX are reporting to one organization in a centralized pool. But where it lacks in weak cross-team collaboration and deep domain innovation within the product. Because UX designer might be changing, the product every 6 months. So they are not very deep inside the product, so that they can see the product over a cycle of time, and also can measure the experience success for that particular product. Moving on to the next model, which is a distributed model, and a lot of companies still follow this model. And distributed model can be in different forms. So one distributed model is the UX team member is a part of the squad and is reporting to some leader in the squad, either a PO leader or a dev leader. So and sometimes the distributed model might be divided by tribes. So each tribe might have their UX teams, which consist of a number of people. Right. So how does it help? It helps in creating deep domain focused experience, right? Because the designers and the researchers are working in the domain for a long time, very closely with the team, with a lot of cross team innovation and design sprints. But it helps in that way. But what it lacks in the understanding the bigger picture, right? Because what happens across products, what happens for the user, who uses multiple of the products. So this team is mostly focused around that particular product, not at the larger ecosystem. And also it causes in creating different style guides for different products. If you don't have a very strong design system, it ends up every product having their own patterns and standards. Now let's look at hybrid setup, and there can be different ways of hybrid setup, but I'm just giving an example in a very large complex company, right? So these are these verticals are the tribes. So tribe 1, tribe 2, and tribe 3, and each tribe consists of multiple squads. There can be, for a large organization, each tribe can be around 1,000 people. So including product, technology, and user experience. So there can be so many squads. Like you can compare like so many Scrum teams, right? So there can be multiple tribes, and we spoke about that there are journey guilds which cuts across multiple tribes, and there can be design system guild. And the generative research is normally a shared one, right? Because it mostly look at the trends, how the user behaviors are changing, and those kind of aspects, right? So this is how a large complex companies organized, and a company similar to the size of ADP or a bigger company than ADP are also organized in a similar fashion. So, once we have looked at the organization and we looked also at the history and evolution of UX, also what I wanted to say is about the future trends and the UX skills required, because the organization is evolving, the users are evolving, the user needs are evolving. So the future, what are the trends, and what are the UX skills we as designers need to inculcate. So, so let's look a bit, pause for a bit and look at the history of industrial revolution, because this has a direct correlation with, the growth of how the technology is evolving and growing, and how the design is changing over time. So industrial 1.0, around 1784, it was about the steam power, steam engine, and steam-based machines. And then 2.0 was mass production, examples like Ford, and then electric energy also came to being. A lot of things were, electrical machines which were doing the task. So the industrial design evolved at that point in time, and a lot of industrial designers evolved in that point in time, designing those kind of machines. So an industry 3.0, most of which we have seen, from last so many years, is the automation, the computers and the mobile things that came into the picture. And this has been all the experience that we have designed, like mobile apps, web apps, different kinds of touch experience, and all the things that we are very familiar with and use in a day-to-day design process. So what is 4.0? And we are almost started 4.0, right? It is more about cyber physical systems, Internet of Things, and network, which is the change that is happening. So what does that mean, right? It is about industrial robotics. So you see a lot of, and you are seeing a lot of posts that people are posting videos, and a lot of companies are posting videos about how this industry is being run by robots. It's more about cybersecurity, because a lot of things will go online. Internet of Things, where each device can speak to each other. It doesn't need to be a communication through humans, but device can communicate with each other. 3D printing, most of you already know about. Advanced human machine interface. What does that mean is, it doesn't mean that the humans will be totally replaced by machines, but maybe instead of operating a machine or a robot, you can just voice control it or give very basic commands to it, and the system with artificial intelligence can figure out most of it, right? So you don't need to do monitoring. The system itself can do its own monitoring. Big data, I think all of you know about. Augmented reality and virtual reality, though we have seen bits and pieces of it, but now over a period of time, these immersive experiences will become a lot into reality, and artificial intelligence is obviously the game changer. So these are the key things of Industrial Revolution 4.0. And with this Industrial Revolution 4.0, experiences are becoming more immersive in nature, right? User is embedded within the experience rather than experience being an external thing and you need to interact with that experience. It's more integrated. It's more integrated in the device. It's more integrated in the system. And we look so some videos of what integrated means. And invisible, right? You don't need to see all the experience that is around you, right? Like a security in the airport, right? If it is invisible, right, you don't feel the the pain, or you don't feel the panic, but actually it is doing its job. And the security is is the best when it is invisible, right? And it will not be only about 2D screens, which we do currently design for 2D screens, but it will be of 3D physical spaces, holographic, VR and haptic. And natural interactions will come into picture, like voice, gestures, AR and VR. So let's look at some of the examples. I hope you can listen to this video. If you can't, can Menka, are people able to listen to this video?
The audio is not there.
Okay, not sure why. Okay, but I will, I'm not.
So you can go back and share the screen with audio.
Okay.
If you would like to do that.
Just a second.
Sure. Could you try sharing again?
Share with computer sound. Okay. There's so many features, right? So sometimes it confuses. Can you see now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Products that look incredibly real.
There you go. All right, nice work. And now we can position that just where you want it. So now we can go into the hollow room and check it out in full scale.
Sounds good.
Okay.
And then you're able to go in and put these goggles on and be fully immersed in the space that you just created.
Okay, thanks.
Go ahead and just slip that on.
The fun part is I can't hear.
And I'll be seeing what
Anyway,
you're
that's
seeing
fine.
here in the app.
Oh, wow.
Audience is able
Oh
to
my
hear.
gosh. That's crazy.
You can move throughout various points in your room
What this
and view what
video
it's
is
going to look
showing
like.
you is,
Even
see
changing
how the experience is
materials
changing
like
and becoming more
countertops,
immersive
paint
in
colors,
nature.
or cabinet finishes.
I think we should change the paint color. I think we were looking at what, Pacific
Shoreline.
Shoreline. Can we change it?
I'll go ahead and change that right now. There you go.
Oh, wow. Oh, that looks much better. Yeah, it looks fantastic.
From there, you're able to take that room that you've built and you can port it over to Google Cardboard. It's a cardboard headset that you can take any smart.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can now.
Okay. So I think it's either both are not coming together. Anyway, so what the video says is the experience is more immersive. So nowadays, when you want to design a house, you use some 3D software in your computer, and you try to see how the house is, and you try to visualize in your mind how it may look if it is in a 3D level. But you see this company they have designed a 3D experience where you can customize and take a walk and see your house and how things are arranged in the house. You can also change styles and take it back into a Google Cardboard where you can take it back home and see the same experience. So let's move on to the next example. Okay, so what this video basically shows is, and nowadays it's very predominant currently in the situation of lockdown. Like most of the classes, maybe some of your kids are doing online classes. A lot of it is like, and sitting and listening to lectures, some whiteboard. Sometimes people are using Google classes, classrooms, and all those kind of stuff. Some people are trying to make PPT. But say for senior students, still maybe they are able to grasp. But for young students, right, who are still class 5 in the primary and pre-primary, it's very difficult to grasp concept. So this kind of virtual reality will become more popular in education, and this kind of experience also needs to be done. So how it will help is, so the experience is more immersive. It's very easy to learn. You can go inside and see the different organs of the body, or some chemistry or physics. Because if you are doing classes online, still the lab and all those things are still missing, right? How to do lab online, and how to explain this 3D kind of immersive experience might help you to create virtual labs. The other things are like touch surfaces everywhere. Right now, your laptop or the screen is the only area where you can touch, or your mobile screen is the only area you can touch. But there will be multiple surfaces which you can touch, right? Any surfaces you can touch, and it will take your feedback. Also, maybe going to the store, you don't need to take the shopping cart along with you, or maybe carry a bag. You might wear a VR glass, something like a Google Glass. Go to the store, add the item into the list, and into the shopping cart, and it will be sent to your home. You don't need to carry things around with you, but at the same time you can see the different products and feel the different products. And then at stores, a lot of us struggle if you are going to a new shop what is available, and if you are fascinated by a particular brand, it becomes more challenging to figure out in a very big mall like Central or something. Though there are things written in the wall, but you have to navigate there to just see that kind of level. But it might also help in giving direction. These are reality, so these are images from real applications which a lot of companies are already working on and have built and implemented. And maybe we are from home, right? Say for example, in the COVID situation, right? So you cannot go to a shopping mall, and it's discouraged if you go to a shopping mall because the social distance cannot be maintained, right? So, but what if you can wear a VR glass and travel inside the shopping mall, select the items, add to cart, and it's shipped to your home? And maybe you don't need to have a mall. Like Amazon, instead of the app, can create a VR experience where you can actually see the product in much more details and understand, get a physical kind of view of the product in a 3D mode. Which is currently not there, right? A lot of times the product we buy is different from what we get. And there are a lot of complaints of the users in those apps. So, and face recognition, this is what I got an image from Hyderabad airport, which is available in the internet. But here the challenge is the security is there, but it's not hidden, right? Every time you have to look, and sometimes you have to adjust your face. But a lot of airports in US actually, it's not hidden, but it's not on your face. Like, you stand in a particular place, and it checks you in. So that is also there. Let's also a lot of brain interfaces are being experimented in MIT labs and different other universities, how to control different things with your thought. So let's see a video what it means immersive and hidden. Let's look into another video.
Are your walls doing enough for you? Are they smart enough? Do they spend way too much time holding up the ceiling and dividing your home into rooms? Shouldn't they also be listening to you and anticipating your every need? Researchers have now found a way to make the most responsive walls yet. Imagine, for example, as you sit down on the sofa, the TV turns on. Lights dim when you start watching something on your laptop, or Alexa lets you know that your kids have turned on a portable video game system somewhere in the house. This isn't very difficult to do. The first step is converting a wall into a giant antenna. In this study, researchers used tape to make a grid on the wall, then covered it over with water-based paint containing nickel. They removed the tape, which left behind a pattern of metallic diamonds that act as electrodes. Then they connected the electrodes to a computer and painted the wall with standard latex paint, hiding any signs of its new capabilities. Now the wall can watch your every move. Touching or moving an arm or limb close to the wall changes the wall's electrostatic fields, just as a finger touching an iPad does. It can tell if you're exercising or heading for the kitchen, and if connected to your house computer, may one day turn on energizing music or flip the kitchen lights on. The newly alert wall can even sense what you are interacting with in the room. Lamps, laptops, TVs, and other electronic devices all generate distinctive electromagnetic fields. Eventually, such walls, which the team created for $20 per square meter.
So you could see, like, the experience is totally integrated. What if you don't need no need to have a separate television, you don't need to have a separate Alexa kind of device, so many devices we have. How if it is integrated within the experience of the wall, right? And the wall itself turns into different features and functionality and can feel you, right? So you don't need multiple devices, and everything might be integrated to it. You go into a plain room, it displays your television when you want. It can feel you, it can switch on and off the lights and all those kind of things, right? So it is more integrated. It is more, into the scene. So these kind of things needs to be designed. So let's look at few key skills of the future from a UX standpoint. Conversation design is becoming big day by day, and this is a skill where people should invest in. Gestures and movement are being there for quite some time, but freehand gestures are becoming more popular rather than touching on any surface. 3D experience, holographic, VR, AR, we saw some examples. Designing for multiple senses, right? Currently, you might be able to control with your eye or with your brain. So you have so many sense organs, right? Why design for very few of them? Physical design for invisible interfaces, we saw, like the design for the wall might be an example. Designing for security might be an example. The wall had to be designed, or certain things which are integrated needs to be designed. And service and business design, which is there from quite some time, but as you grow in your career, this is quite important, right? So because you have to pick up service and business design skills. So I will quickly share a skill graph, which I mostly share with my team. I don't know if you have seen this, but this is something which I tried to create. So when you start your career, you have skill 1, or maybe you have multiple skills, but you are at a level 1. As you grow in your career, you go to skill level 2, 3, 4 for that particular group of skills, right? But once you achieve the max of that skill, right, so it kinds of flatten, right? So you cannot achieve more of that skill because you have already achieved. So your career also flattens with time. Then you start achieving the next skill at some point in time in your career, not wait for and then you try to move in the level 1, 2, and 3, and after certain time it also flattens, but still you get more growth in your career, right? Because you achieved a new skill. And same thing for, as you keep on achieving more skills, you see the graph, it becomes like an exponential growth in your career. So the only way to grow in your career is to achieve the relevant skills and also understand how the industry is changing, how the market is changing, also to understand how the technological landscape is changing, also to understand how the business requirements are changing with time and the user requirements are changing with time. So this is very critical, and acquire the skills, keep on acquiring those skills and become your version from 1.0 to 2.0, your own 2.0 and your own 3.0. And that's how you grow in your career. So, last few minutes, before we move on to questions, this section is specifically focused for folks who are new into UX. And I think, this might help you in understanding. So for UX interviews, what we normally look for, there are a list of things that we look for. We definitely look for your LinkedIn profile. We look into your resume. Portfolio is very important for designers. We also try to figure out your design skills from your portfolio and design assignments. We also check the fitment to the role. Sometimes you might be a very good designer, but might not fit the required role. So, that might also be a case. We also look for out-of-the-box thinking skills. fitment with the team in general, how the person will be able to work in a team, and able to handle different kinds of situation and show leadership in that situation. I will go into quickly go into the details of this in the next few minutes. So LinkedIn profile is very important because a lot of these resumes currently are sourced through LinkedIn, specifically for design and maybe for products and technology as well. So also these UX positions are filled through references, so only good work can get you good reference. Design your resumes very carefully, and one-pager resumes are now common. I see a lot of one-pager resumes coming, but the challenge is what you write into the one page is important. It's not important to write one-page resumes. It is important what you write. A lot of people like skills write Microsoft Word, PowerPoint. Still, I get a lot of resumes. So those might not be relevant to write. Write the focus on the few specific skills for which you will be hired for, and also try to focus on your experience. Don't try to put experience here and there so that the person who is scanning your resume gets confused, because there are hundreds and hundreds of resumes that pour in. So the HR person or the UX person who is scanning your resume need to had very few amount of time to just understand your overall profile. So design your resume in that form. And also from your resume design, people are able to understand how you're able to design information and represent information in a 2D interface. Also, portfolio is important. Every designer should have a portfolio. If your company does not allow you to show your work, build your own portfolio. Do some third-party applications on your own and do your portfolio. Doesn't matter, right? So don't only put bright UI screenshots in your portfolio, because that can be anybody can copy from anywhere. That doesn't build trust in the interviewer, right? So at least showcase one product step by step, from research to persona to journey map, task flows, and until prototype. So, and you should be able to explain that entire process, because during the interview, people will be asking you detailed questions. If your portfolio does not have that, then they will try to probe in details, and you might not have answers for. And only add work into the portfolio which you can back up and which you are very conversant with. Otherwise, in the interview, you will fail miserably. From a design assignment, a few suggestions is focus on the problem statement. A lot of people directly jump to solution, and I've seen people giving standard mobile apps as one of the solution which is already available. Do some secondary research if possible in the internet, right? Because for an assignment you don't have so much time to do a big research, but do some secondary research just to show that you tried to understand the domain or the particular problem statement in details. Mention your assumptions very clearly, because assumptions are very important, because you might not understand all of it, but you can also mention, okay, I understood this and these are my assumptions, because the design problem might not be in so much of details. Focus on the process, how you arrive to the solution. Look for out of the box ideas. Don't always put mobile apps, because when we go through a lot of resumes, a lot of people just put mobile, and even for assignments, we give some assignment, people don't consider the other form factors. Maybe for that design, a web form factor or a desktop form factor would have been a better than a mobile form factor. So focus on the what the idea requires. Maybe a touch screen, maybe a different gadget might be required, and you might design a different gadget. So think from out of the box ideas, and design for very few screens. So in detail, don't need to design every screen in detail, because few screens people will be judging your understanding of the detailed design for that particular screen. So these are some of the suggestions, and looking at the interviews, normally it varies from company to company, but these are following things that are being looked into, like how the person fit. So there might be a fitment round with the HR might call you and ask, like, you're around your skills and you're around your experience. Sometimes some designer might call you for 30 minutes and do that. Design round, which is a detailed discussion about your portfolio and your design assignment to figure out your design skills. Team round, basically how you fit with the team. Sometimes you are given an opportunity to present your design to your team or different stakeholders in product management and development. A management round is, I think all of you know what is management and HR round. With that, I end up my presentation here, and questions, please. Over to you, Menka.
Thank you, Tatan. Thank you for the fantastic session. We have a question from Sharan Pillai. Is it better for a team to hire specialists, for example, UX research specialist, or to hire generalist, for example, UI designer who can also develop?
Ideally, if your company is able to hire you, you should hire a specialist. But it also depends on the available budget, type of project, and the type of company, right? So if you can hire only one person and you have the budget for one UX, you will definitely hire a unicorn or a generalist. But it is very difficult to get a generalist, for instance, right? A person cannot be master of UX design, UX research, as well as UX development. Same thing, like a lot of people say, I'm a full stack developer. But when we hire full stack developer, we see that a lot of people are either proficient in the middle tier or the backend, not in the UI. Some people are very proficient in the UI. So, it's not able, if you are able to get a unicorn, then, go for it. Everybody wants to get a unicorn, but are the unicorns really available in the market? That would be the question. So I would suggest, if you have the budget, these are specialized skills. Like like development, you have so many skills, right? It's not about UX. UX is a profession. UX is not a particular skill is like UX. Within UX, you have so many skills, which I showed, right? Similarly, a backend developer or a database developer, a Java developer, a HTML, or a mobile developer might be different developers, right? Can you get a person to do, database architecture plus, Java plus if required web, and, then if you can get that unicorn, should always go for it. But ideally, these are specialized skills, and people specialize, and even in the universities and institutes of design, they have these specialized skills in the masters. A lot of people focus around the specialized skills in different parts of the globe.
Great, thank you. So let's take a couple of questions more. So there is one more question. Also, how is a technology like VR supposed to be sustainable in its current state, where it's a bulky and expensive product, whereas solutions like education need it to be accessible to every economic background? A very relevant question given the COVID situation, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did not get the first part of the question. What was it, bulky?
So what Charan Pillai is trying to say is, how is a technology like VR supposed to be sustainable in its current state, where it is bulky and expensive, whereas solutions like education need it to be accessible for all economic background? Yes,
correctly said, right? So we always do with what is available. Currently, the VR is not very successful because of the reason it's not about bulky, but it's not also cheap, right? But Google has invented a method with Google Cardboard. At least you have some bit of some quality of phone which you can use with Google Cardboard. So people are, it's not evolved to that state, but people are trying to do. I know this specifically because one of my friends has a VR startup basically for education. And he did a lot of research where the success and failures, and I was consulting with his company. So it's very challenging, right? Because it's not for for the masses, but even for the mainstream schools, the international schools, still they have not moved to VR. But what we expect in the future, maybe things will be much more cheaper, because nowadays people have a phone. But previous, if you check 5 years, 10 years back, nobody had a smartphone. Like only few people had the smartphone. Now even everybody, even your people who work at your house, maids, and those people also have some form of smartphone, maybe Chinese or something, but they have some form of smartphone. If we are able, and with time, the capability of those phones, the processors and the memory and everything is increasing, and it's becoming cheaper day by day, right? So at some point in time, with Google Cardboard and those kind of phones, it might be possible. But if there is no alternative, still we could use voice alternatives to reach out. A lot of people have used radio channels to broadcast education, and all those kind of things are still there. Yeah, but VR is still not in the mainstream, but it will be, people are trying to bring it to the mainstream. Only challenge is, as you mentioned, the cost. But what we see from the research, it is being adopted slowly, step by step. Similarly, what happened with mobile, right? So, now people are using less of laptop and more of mobile. Mobile users are more, people are using apps on mobile. There are few people who use Amazon in a laptop, or Myntra, or, Myntra, so anyway, went to the full mobile version some years back. So, yes, over time it will be cheap, but there we can also explore different option at this point in time, which is available, which people are exploring.
Great. There is another question from Rakesh Natarajan. How important are UX skills for a backend middleware developer? Also, how would you measure out-of-box thinking skills?
Yes, that's a very good question. So, what is a product? So to create a product, you need different kinds of skills, right? So it's like the blind man and the elephant, right? So if you blindfold everybody and ask to touch the elephant, the story that we read in our childhood or listened from our grandparents, people told it's a leg, people touch the tail, told rope, trunk, something, body, wall. So people could not figure out what the product is, right? Only if the blind man would have consulted each other, they could have figured out that it is it is an elephant, not this different objects that they were speaking about. Similarly, but to have a common discussion between those blind men, there should be common understanding of each other's skills. So we all are like the blind men. Somebody is representing the UX, somebody is representing a backend, as you mentioned, somebody product, somebody business, somebody maybe sales. So if all the blind men come together, they're able to figure. But if a UX designer is speaking to you or something and you are not able to interpret that thing, so it will be very difficult. And if you are speaking some technology to the UX designer, that person is not able to understand, that will also become very difficult. So not only for a backend guy or a middle tier guy, it is important to understand experience. Similarly, for UX designer, it is also important to understand a bit of business and also understand technology. And as you grow in your career, you have to understand more of business and technology, because at the end of the day, why we create products, it's not for the technology. It's not for any other thing. At the end of the day, we create products because we want to solve some user problem and also earn money from that product, right? So yes, everybody needs to have understanding of the other skills. You may not be an expert in UX, but you need to definitely understand what you are building, because at the end of the day, your backend technology is what is just creating is experience for the user. So if your backend technology is not nice, you might not be able to create great experience, because if you run a query, it might get stuck, right? What's the experience? The UI is very beautiful, the experience, because experience is a factor of all the blind men coming together. Any other questions then? Any other questions? Hello? Hello, Menka? Are the audience able to hear me? Hello? I see there are a few. Okay, I can. Yeah, you guys can hear me. But I can read the questions that are there in the panel in case we are not able to hear Menka. Hello.
Hey, that we can go ahead, Menka.
Sorry, I had a slight technical issue.
Okay. Okay.
So just let's take one more question, and
sure.
So there is an interesting question from Smriti. We have a lot of roles like CTO, CEO, Chief Product Officer. What are your thoughts on Chief Design Officer? How do you get there?
Yeah. So see, the industry has evolved over time, right? So if you see which was the first role to come into being was the Chief Technology Officer, right? Because technology was the first. They are early in the industry, and even before UX came as a full-time, kind of profession, and it was formalized. Technology existed still long back. Then came the Chief Product Officer, and nowadays, a lot of companies are having the Chief Design Officer, right? So over a period of time, you will see a lot of folks, having this title as Chief Design Officer. Why? Because design has moved from just being the UI kind of thing, right, which people used to think, to strategy. Because at the end of the day, the experience that you create for your customers are actually creating businesses, are changing business, are keeping in the market. And the presentations you have heard from few of our speakers in the last few days have been speaking around it. Now, how to get into the role in the longer term? Definitely, a Chief User Experience Officer will not be sitting and designing most of the stuff, right? But Chief User Experience Officer will be somebody who has evolved from design, have picked up business skills, and can create the strategy for experience in line with what is requirement for business. So you have to understand business design. You have to understand, everything about business. So, business models. You have to understand value propositions. You have to understand blue ocean strategies. You have to understand Horizon 1, Horizon 2, Horizon 3, how this work. You have to understand all the gamut of venture design, right? And business design for getting into that role.
Great. Thank you so much, Tapan, for this fantastic session. I'm sure the audience loved it. As a special token of appreciation from all of us, here is a virtual badge for you. So the QR code will take you to your own Hall of Fame page on our webpage. And once again, a big thank you.
Yeah, thank you all, and thank you for hosting this event. This I have listened to a few of the talks. This has really been a great event, and thank you, participants. And also, you can post your questions on LinkedIn. I know you might have a lot of questions. I will be more than happy to answer, not only today, but for the next few days. And anytime you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I will be more than happy to learn from you and also understand and answer your questions. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you.
Bye.
So Smriti is the winner for this session. Smriti, congratulations. You asked the best question, and we will get in touch with you with your gift. And quickly moving on, please send us testimonials, scan this QR code. And again, leaderboard, please check this URL and you will get a one-on-one mentoring session with our speakers by referring your colleagues and friends. Now, moving on to the next question. For the next question, please ask your questions on this LinkedIn thread. It is available on your chat window, and alternatively, you can scan this also. Now, moving on to the next session, we have with us Karti Subbarama, a woman power in design, founder of Experience, who will moderate the career panel. Delighted to welcome you, Karti. Please take over the session.
Thank you, Menka. That's a fabulous session, a brilliant segue to what we are going to discuss. So yeah, I have an amazing panel with me today, and there's a simple mathematics that I would like to share with you. If at all we live a long life, like 36,500 days, that's about 100 years of life. And if we calculate how much time do we spend with our career, looks like it's about 7,000 days. And 7,000 days of your life, where do you want to spend? That's the question. And if at all you have chosen design as your career path, there is no better panel to really go ahead and ask all, questions that are bugging you for those 7,000 days. And these are the best people who can answer that for you. So I have with me here Shaik Sen, and Shaik, say hi to all of us. And Shaik is an IDC IIT Bombay alum who has spent over 10 years in design leadership positions at various organizations. He co-founded Cheese, an award-winning UI UX design agency in 2008, which was later acquired by Neve Technologies and subsequently by Razorfish. So Cheese was one of the best and on the list of NASSCOM Fastest 50. Later, he joined Frog India as a first hire in Bangalore, participating in some of the major international projects across the globe. In 2012, Shaik joined Common Floor as its head of design, and later to Practo as its AVP, leading the design function. Currently, he's head of design at Misho. Shaik's core areas of design include design systems, emergent design, user research, design careers, and he's actively mentoring a lot of designers, advisors, startups, takes workshops and classes on design as well. Apart from work, Shaik likes to spend time on art projects, movies, and has deep interest in music and dance. What an amazing, I couldn't resist saying that this is an amazing profile. And Shaik, he's with us and have questions ready for Shaik from your side. Welcome, Shaik. If you're there, hi. And along with Shaik, we have Ramesh Korisheri. I hope I pronounced it right. Ramesh leads the design and site. Oh wow! as a director at Walmart Labs India, he's instrumental in setting up the team and has been managing a talented group of designers across India and US. With over 18 years of experience, his area of expertise includes user experience design, strategy, user research, and design leadership. Simplicity is about subtracting the obvious and adding the meaningful. By John Maeda is one of his favorite quotes. And he believes that great design is beyond screens. And as designers, when one starts looking beyond the obvious, they can uncover a lot of interesting insights. Outside work, Ramesh loves to travel, play games, and has passion for photography. What a vast experience you have, Ramesh. It's so lovely to have you here with us today evening, and welcome to the panel. And I'm super excited to bring in all questions to you. Say hi to our participants. Yes, welcome, sir. And along with Shaik and Ramesh, I have Stu Smith. Stu is a designer, musician, and dad living in Austin, Texas. Across his career in design, he has worked with small business owners, startups, and major corporations to create valuable brand and product experiences. From running his own studio to working in-house, Stu has acquired a diverse perspective on design. These days, Stu is handling product design at Trello, working remotely from his home office. Stu collaborates with teammates spread across the globe to create new ways to engage with Trello. If you are a Trello user, you cannot find a better person to talk about this. What an amazing career path, Stu, and super stoked to have you with us today evening. Welcome. Hello. And I hope he's muted now and he will unmute and say hi to all of us. And along with,
hey.
Hi, Stu. Along with Shaik, Ramesh, Stu, we also have Vasudha Chandak with us. Determined to find the first right job, Vasudha caught herself juggling between endless interviews, assignments, long waits. We can relate to all of this, isn't it? With 13 companies while having a full-time job, she noticed that it took many rounds of interviews and discussions just to get the basic answers. What is your role? What is the work culture? What is product roadmap? What are the opportunities? What are challenges, etc. And thus, she said, okay, let me go and fix the design recruitment problem. And she's a recruiter today. On average, she has an amazing record of 1:5, which means if she sends 5 designers, 1 gets selected for sure. Yeah. Over the past 6 years, she has built design teams at Flipkart, Housing, Ola, Swiggy, Groupon, etc. She was the first designer of Practo and Shoppo, and she's married to a co-founder of HackerRank. What a recruitment family you are, Vasudha. Harishankaran, reading, cooking, refraining from cleaning are her new quarantine habits. Amazing to have you here with us today evening, Vasudha. And it's there cannot be a better person to talk about design, hiring, and recruitment than you. So super, super excited to have you here. So let's get started. Can I see all my panel? Am I not seeing you? Oh, wow, I can see that. Lovely, lovely. Great to see you all here. So I did some hard work last week. I went ahead and collected a lot of questions from the various parts of the globe through Twitter, through LinkedIn, through DMs, through WhatsApp groups, and all of it. I hope I'm going to get most of their answers. And yeah, let's get started. We have enough to cover, and we have only probably 45 to 60 minutes. We'll do this for 45 minutes. This is the questions that I collected elsewhere. But the last 15 minutes, the floor will be open, and they can ask you questions directly. So there we go. So let's get started. Menaka, can I take over?
Sure, Kathy, please go ahead.
Yay. Awesome. I wanted to make a D out of it. So yeah, here we are. What an amazing panel to start today with. So here is the first question that I wanted to, so the way I have kind of made it is like, it's understanding the entire life cycle and also going ahead and literally looking around the specifics. So each question, of course, everyone, please answer them. The person who it is directed to with the bold, please, I would like to hear your perspective first, and then all of us can add to it. What can we expect in a typical design career path? Ramesh, this question is for you, given your vast experience. What can we expect?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, and welcome all to this discussion. But I think if you look at a typical design career path, right, like I would consider it as a very fascinating path, right? Like, and I wouldn't say that it's a linear one, though. There's a lot of twists and turns, right? And it starts at the very beginning of somebody getting into design itself, right? So let's say we have designers, or we have folks who have moved into design from various different disciplines, right? So from engineering, from arts, finance, and other things, right? Like, so that itself is like, the first area of introspection, right? Like, so you kind of go through that initial phase. Should I get into design or not, right? Like so, and then you start getting into design, and then you move through the journey, right? Like so, and most of us, start as creators, right? Like so, you start building something, you make something out of nothing, and as you start excelling in your craft, right? You start to learn the nitty-gritties of design, right? And over a few years, as you hone your design, as you push your, pixel perfect designs, then there comes a stage, right? Like, so what do you do now, right? And then, I mean, of course, a lot of people go through different, like there are mentors, there are, your design community friend folks, or, the opportunities that is available to you at that point of time. And then you kind of branch out, right? Like so whether you want to, go like a managerial path, or, you want to go like the design consultant path, or maybe you just ultimately shift to, let's say, product management, right? Or, get into consultancy, right?
Wow.
And then again, right? Like, so you again go through a smaller this thing, right? Like I would see it more like a tree, right? Like, so from the roots, you kind of get into something, you build up, then you kind of, introspect, and then you kind of branch out, right? And then, again, you might further branch out, right? Like maybe you took a path and then you say, that's not the one for me. And then you kind of come back, right? Like, so it's a fascinating
Awesome.
journey, right? Like, right. And at each level, as you kind of adapt and learn, you become a better and better designer.
Lovely, lovely. And to open to my panel, anything that you would like to add on top of Ramesh's thoughts, which is something which our designers should take away with them?
Maybe I can add something there. Just wanted to add on top of what Ramesh had just said. One of the interesting thing about design is that, like I was listening to the last panel, Tatan speak, right? And he said that design is like, if you look at engineering, it is at least 30-40 years old, already established function, versus design, which has evolved in the past few years. So I think one great thing that happens is that you learn. I mean, it's a continuous process of learning. So in your typical design career, you're constantly learning, and if you learn fast enough, you actually will reach the edge of where it has already reached, right? Which means that you get the opportunity to define and design some of the the way the function is going to evolve. And I think that's the most beautiful part of it. Like, for example, today we are talking about design systems, we are talking about design ops, we are talking about evolutionary design, because things are moving so fast, and the careers, even the career directions are getting changed over the time. Right now we have COVID, we will have different kind of, I don't know what kind of functions we're going to have, right? So
we should talk about that. Yes, we should talk about that. Yeah.
So I think
Awesome.
that's one of the great takeaways from design career, that you can keep defining things. Yeah.
You define your career path. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Let's go on and ask Vasudha about what does it mean to get on the right foot? Like, if somebody is entering a design career or growing in a design career, what is the right foot? Because every choice has a consequence. So if at all I need to really, kind of get on the right foot, what would that be, Vasudha?
So it depends, since people come into design from different fields, different background, they have different aspirations. So there is no obviously one size fit answer for everyone. What I recommend for people specifically getting into design is that before even diving deep, take a step back and try to figure out what areas of design interest you more. Right? Because design can be overwhelming. There are so many umbrellas, there's so many verticals you can dive into. So understanding what exactly excites you. So are you interested in visual design? Are you interested in UX part of it, the marketing design part of it? Because so once you understand, it becomes that much easier to dive deep into those topics and reach out to the correct mentors and seek help. So once you have figured out that, okay, these are the areas I'm good at, or these are the areas I want to become better at. Let's say you have picked up product design or visual design. So if you want to become a product designer, the best part of it is, start doing some side projects. We are surrounded by so many apps, so many, problem statements, something which we encounter daily. Start working on side projects. Get feedback from people, iterate on it, look up Google. There are so many, incredible case studies posted by fellow designers. Go through them, understand what are the things they have done better than you, what are the points you have missed, get feedback. Currently, the best part of design community, like the fact that we are having this session, there are so many webinars, so many design meetups virtually which are happening, which didn't used to happen a couple of years back. So the design community mentor are so much more available. If you have done the work, reach out to those specific mentors, register for these seminars, sign up for all these portfolio sessions, get feedback from mentors. What I've seen is that a lot of times, when you think about junior designer, the number one thing hiring manager look for is curiosity to learn, hunger, how willing they are. It's one thing to say self-motivate, I'm a self-motivated designer, another thing to actually do the self-motivation part in action. So reach out to these mentors, say that these are the things I've implemented. And if they have a hiring position open, you are the first person they would think of. So you're already ahead of the curve. So you are not just learning, getting the right mentorship, but you're also getting the job offer. Yeah, so I think that would be my points.
There is a theme coming along. Own your career path. You can pretty much take it in the right foot. Amazing. Any other thoughts you'd like to add, panel? Anything at all that would help us to get on the right foot?
I would say that, like, it's sort of, I really like that line around like owning your career path and like realizing that you as a designer, like, this is what you're well equipped to do, right? You're well equipped to like envision a new way of things working and a different way than could be like the typical path. But I think there's the other thing around just setting your mindset in the right place, like being realistic of like where you're at, what level you're at, where you can be helped. I think, yeah, one of the best books I've ever read is this book called Ego is the Enemy. It's by this author, Ryan Holiday. But it's about basically putting yourself in the mindset of, like not letting your like ambition and like your confidence get the best of you. Like, it's great to have those things, but especially if you're like early in the career, you need to be open to being like we're talking about mentorship. Like, you need to be open to actually sort of being like clay in that moment, like have other people really shape you into the designer that you want to be, and don't be so rigid to say like, okay, the path I want to take is this. And so I think it's like really being open to, especially in the early days of the career, like being pliable. So, yeah.
What a brilliant advice about the mindset also plays a big part in getting in the right foot. So just along those lines, what are the conscious choice one must make to skyrocket the design career? If I want to, speed up my growth, Shaik, what should one do about that?
Okay, so I will touch the first part, like the early in the career, what you can do to skyrocket the design career. I think after you have matured to some level, you can take those conscious choices yourself. But if you are an early designer, I think there are two parts to it. One very important part is about having a voice for design, right? Because you have to articulate, you have to communicate design to a lot of people, and sometimes you're doing that with product managers and businesses, right? And finding the right voice is very important. And the second part too is that either you find the right voice or you tease a person in front of to have the right listening. Okay. Now, how can you? So when we talk about the conscious choices, I think for the first part, to have the right voice, or let's talk about the second part, which is having the right listening. So a large organization, a mature design organization, where there's a mature design function, there the listening is better, right? So you go there to learn about how other functions respect and listen to design, right? And if you are going to a startup and you are a young designer, look for at least a good leadership, because they will teach you how to have the right voice. Okay, like to give some examples from the Indian industry itself, like housing, for example, housing designers, the reason why they're able to create so much of impact is because the confidence and the voice that they created allowed them to have that conversation in the business context, and that was extremely powerful. So for young designer, it's very important to learn from either a great design function or a great mentor or a leader, design leader, to either have the voice or educate the person in front of you to listen right.
Wow. Wow. So it's our job to really do that. This is fabulous. Anything else to add on top of Shaik's thoughts, which could help us make conscious choices? Any one of you?
Yeah, I think adding to Shaik's content,
Yes,
like I think in the initial phase of the career, right? Like I think it's important to focus on the craft, right? So just making sure that you're learning and you're able to execute. I think that's really important, right? And once you get to a certain level, and then that's when you start, imbibing a lot of other qualities, right? Like, so no matter, whether you're, early in your career or, mid-level or senior level, right? Like never, stop. I mean, you should always be an active practitioner, right? Like, so you should always stick to the design roots, right? And never let go of that piece, right? And also kind of, being more, open-minded and willing to learn and adapt, right? Because design is changing really fast, right? And of course we're going to touch upon COVID and other things. That's kind of given a lot of opportunities, right? Like, so it's always to keep that open mind, willing to adapt, and go with the flow, right? Like, so that's some of the things that we should keep in mind.
Hone your craft. Okay, consciously hone your craft. Awesome, great. Stu, what are the highs and lows one must be aware of in a design career path? Because these can have domino effects on our choice making. So what should we be aware of?
Yeah, I mean, I can really only speak from my experience, but I think the biggest thing for me is I've done a fair amount of learning through failing, and developing resilience in those moments is like it's, I don't even know if it's a skill. It's just like a character trait of like developing resilience. If like I imagine lots of other panelists probably relate to that. Like you try things out early and then fall on your face a bit, and then like the process of like picking yourself back up, and like whether that's the project just got torn apart in a critique, or failure could look like, oh, this thing that I really
everyone is nodding right now.
yeah, it's like, and it could be like that thing that I shipped that I really fought for, like didn't have the business impact that I thought it would, and like then figuring out how to sort of unpack where you went wrong. So that's the lows for sure. And I think the nugget there is just working to, to know that that's going to be the case. You're going to have rough spots. Doesn't mean you're like bad at the job. It's just, it's part of getting better. And then I think like the highs though are really amazing. Ramesh was talking about like really honing your craft. I think that there's so much for me that comes out when the thing that I've designed shipped and is in production and is out for the world to see. Like few things feel as good as that. And so especially when you're working with like an engineering team where, yeah, you might have like a big North Star vision, but then you sort of have to work over the course of weeks to negotiate, okay, what is this now like from a feasibility standpoint? Like what can we actually build in the time that we're allowed? And then working to sort of shepherd the design work from your initial vision to like out there in front of the world. And that sort of like progression and pushing through that and actually getting something out the door just feels amazing. So so for me, that's the thing, is like you're gonna fail a lot to get to the point where you can like get to those highs.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just important to be open to like the twists and turns. So
awesome. That's good to know. At least we know that the path has twists and turns. Shaik, I specifically remember something we discussed about this life cycle where we do go through some mood swings as designers. Would you like to talk about that? Because I think it resonates very well with the highs and the lows.
Yeah, sure. So like we discussed last time, I think this was a kind of pattern that I was seeing in many designers when I was speaking to young designers. And this is like early in their career, they're basically, you have the highs of the craft, because when you do the craft, you are learning, you put X effort, you get 2X results. So the you know, the growth curve is pretty high, and that's pretty exciting. And that's but sometimes after 2, 3 or 4 years, specifically in UX design kind of a UX career, there comes a point when you feel a little disheartened, because now if you're putting X amount of effort, you get only X/2 result or X/10 result. The curve has flattened out. So the craft bit has kind of flattened out a bit, and you feel very disillusioned, because you want to kind of think that, should I like continue being a UX designer? Many people have said that I would like to go back and make movies, or I would like to go back and open up a coffee shop, things like those, right? And farming is something also like designers have spoken about a lot. Yeah,
totally.
Like so
I have done that.
okay. Yeah, but typically what is happening is that during that time, maybe the craft is not evolving, but at the back of your life, you are also evolving as a person. You are probably getting your getting married or having kids, or going through health problems, legalities, financial things and stuff like those. So many dimensions of human life is opening up in front of us, right? And that kind of some way trickles down into our solutioning at some point of time. Now it's no more about creating the screens, it's about knowing that why we are creating the screens and how can it create the maximum impact. So when you come out of that phase, and I've seen that people now feel much more empowered to do the same designing, but now they're much more problem centric, right? Because they know that I have the craft to create the end result, but it's more important for me to understand the problem more. Now in the same solution, which probably we're making a healthcare product previously, the same healthcare product you will make, and maybe the 90% of solutioning will still be the same, but you will be more cognizant and conscious about the choices that you're making. So that's again, and this cycle kind of continues. So there are those lows in your career where you feel that you're not growing, but my take on this is that probably you are evolving at the back. I mean, like, you don't know that it's not showing up, but you are evolving. So just hold on.
Yeah. Awesome. That sounds very, very hopeful, because yes, I have heard many designers say, I'm not sure, I'm not growing. And the previous speaker kind of showed a graph which kind of resonated with, and said, these are the skills that are needed in the beginning of your career, and these are the skills that are needed in a different part of your career. But you are in the same function. You're growing with different parts, dimensions of your craft. I could definitely relate to that. This is great. This especially comes, as a question. In fact, this was the plus 100 kind of a question. When designers are moving from graphic design into user experience, what is the advice? How do they really cope up with the discipline change? This is specifically to you, because you do have different backgrounds coming together. So please let us know, how should we handle this?
Yeah, totally. I've done this, so hopefully I have a somewhat sensical answer. In my career, I started doing like t-shirt designs. It was like how I got into doing graphic design work, and that led to like other print work. Did a lot of branding and logo design, and then ultimately the small like design studio that I was running like had clients coming in for like websites and all these things. So I kind of like eased into getting into the more like UI UX space, and really have like over the last 10 years or so grown into being a product designer. And so I sort of learned by failing, learned by just, having experience, like trying to really like push through things. I really wish I would have had somebody kind of sit me down and explain just how different like doing branding and like illustration and graphic design, pure graphic design work was from product design. So my advice is, if you're one of those people that would describe yourself as like a true graphic designer, but you really want to move into this other space, first of all, anyone can do it. It's totally possible. There's like amazing resources out there now that I didn't have. When I started as a designer, like I think I started on like Adobe Creative Suite, like one, that was like the first like suite that I ever used, or I know I used it in high school even before it was Creative Suite. So, so the point is, I'm an old guy, but now like if you're newer in the career, you have all these resources. You have, Institute Product Design. We've got like other boot camps that are amazing out there, and you can actually just leverage these resources, and that'll help you sort of set the stage of understanding like how different this is from the work you're doing currently. I think it's good to be able to say like, okay, I've got this skill set and now I understand what, I'll just call it like product design, user experience, what that actually is as a discipline, and identify the things where you're weak. So it's like, oh, okay, I might be an amazing visual designer, but oh, I don't know much about user research because I haven't really had to do a lot of that for my role, or I don't know how to like concept test my work like from a usability lens. I don't know much about accessibility. Yeah, so it's like I think it's great to like really start early and audit, okay, what are the things I don't know, and then pick the things that within that sound interesting to you. So if you're like, oh yeah, it sounds kind of cool to like go interview people about my work, you can kind of pick a growth area. And then I would say you can also really, like mentorship was mentioned before, you can find a mentor who's someone in your town, or actually locations agnostic these days, but you can find someone that's sort of doing the career that you want and just pick their brain. And I find it really important, like I do a bit of mentorship, and like really find it important to sit and actually look at the work, so if you're like somebody had suggested doing side projects, if you want to get into this by even just doing a side project, like design something that kind of scratches your own itch of like, oh, I really wish this thing existed. Review that with your mentor and like ask them to be really candid about what you're missing. It's like that thing that I was talking about, just being realistic about where you're at in your understanding and like looking for help and being moldable. So
Awesome.
So that's my advice. Yeah,
that sounds right about it. It's an authentic way of really moving from one dimension to another. Vasudha, you would have seen a lot of us moving from graphic design into user experience. What were your understandings, learnings, any patterns that you have seen that could help us to kind of have a better?
Sure. So I also kind of was juggling between UX and graphic design since I came from design school. So on another note, I think one of the pointers I wish someone had told me this was, battling through imposter syndrome. I didn't knew it existed. I would compare my work with all the dribble screens, and it would just feel that there is no way I'm ever going to be good enough for that. So if you are shifting, or you might be a great visual designer, or if you are shifting to a different form of design, it takes time and patience. Like it has been said by some designers, I don't remember the name, but that you have to juggle out 1,000 hours of shit work to get to the core craft of it. So having that patience and going through it. From a portfolio perspective, I think in terms of craft, what differs is that mostly graphic design, you can do it in solitude. You can come up with some concept and you can do it alone. When it comes to UX design, working from team, one of the things which happens is the collaborative work. So if you are working through user, you want to switch to UX design. A is empathy, understanding. You need to have a little bit understanding of user research, understanding the core problem space you are solving. You are solving, when you are doing graphic design, you are doing it for yourself. It could be a poster design, it could be t-shirt design, something what feels good for you. But when you're doing UX, you are solving a problem for someone else. That someone else could be you, someone else could be your friend, your colleague, or some ex-user. So there's a shift in approach. So whenever, and even in terms of portfolio, I would say what differs is
when it comes to UX design, you will be doing a lot of side projects or case studies, versus when it comes to visual design, you just have to put some bunch of screens. You don't have to actually explain the thoughts. People will see the screen and understand it. But from a hiring manager, the moment you say you are a UX designer, they want to see the process. How did you get to it? What are the problems you are solving? How did what are the steps you took to understand the problem space? What was your design process like? So yeah.
That's solid advice. So stay there. I have another question for you on very similar lines, because there is a lot of self-taught designers, and our universities probably graduate 20 designers in a year. So self-taught versus designers from universities. So how does hiring differ? How do companies look at these designers?
So currently with COVID, the scenario has changed. With university, there are lesser freshers job. There are lesser companies which are going for campus recruitments. So I'm a self-taught designer myself. I didn't go to any design university. People who are graduating from design university definitely do have an advantage. They are surrounded by like-minded peers, so there is a lot of knowledge sharing which happens. Obviously, you are learning the craft in depth. Second, companies come to the campus. That's very different from people who are self-taught. You have to search and make your way to the company. Here, the things are different. That being said, it's not like it's easy. You are competing with the best of the best. Every one of your friend is your competitor who is fighting for the same job. So you need to do something to stand out. So it could be internship, it could be side projects, it could be learning more about the company beforehand so that you can present some relevant solution when you're applying. When it comes to self-taught designers, side projects are definitely the key. You have to build something. You have to show that you are self-motivated so that you can get your word out. From a hiring manager perspective, when they are scanning the portfolios, currently in this scenario, if any company is hiring, they must be getting thousands of applications for the same post. So all the designers who are complaining, I've been there, but all the designers who are complaining that companies don't respond, we don't hear back from companies, there is a reason for that. So the owners comes to a designer to make sure their portfolio stands out. So before applying, read about the company. Let's say if you are whatever designer you are, and if you're a product designer, interaction designer, visual designers, go read about the company. Have your portfolio kind of made. And one more critical things I've seen is that people have all sort of things on their portfolio. So if you're applying for a product designer, it just doesn't make sense that you have some creative design posts hanging around there as the number one thing a hiring manager would see. These are already these are very small nitpicks when you see, but any hiring manager has 2 or 3 seconds to screen at your portfolio and to filter it out that they will have a detailed view through in these portfolio, right? So just making sure your portfolio is sorted and it's relevant to the hiring manager. I think what designers need to keep in mind is your portfolio is your product, which you are designing for the end user, which is the hiring manager. If you get that, you have a way great chance to getting a call back from the company or standing out from the rest of the competition. I hope I answered.
Yes. In fact, you gave a lot more texture to the answer, and this is great. So far we have been just talking about staying in design, but some designers do want to move from design into product management. So what does this mean, Shaik, especially from your career? Have you seen things like this, and what is your take, and is it possible first? Is it doable? If it is doable, why so? Is it valuable? Questions like that.
Yeah, I think first of all, it's a great thing. I mean, if a designer who turns into a product manager is kind of a unicorn in the product design space, right? Because a product manager who has a design understanding is something to kill for. And we have seen great. We have such experiences. I mean, such product managers in the industry. For example, just to give one example, Clear Trips, Rush and Sunit. Rush was a product manager there, and he comes with a arts background. He studied in US. He was an arts graduate and then moved into design, and you can see that, sorry, and moved into product, and you can see that and why Clear Trips design was so brilliant, right?
Oh yes,
right, yeah.
oh yes.
So
I'm a big fan.
yeah, so it's definitely possible, and in my career I've seen equal number of people who have moved from, I would say a little lesser number of people who have moved from design and made a successful transition to product management, and a slightly larger number of people who have moved from design to product and have come back to design again, right? Okay, and like we were discussing last time also, that the whole so to the people who want to really try it, I would say that please go ahead and try this. Okay, try, if you think that calling is happening for you, try to make that transition, but just be aware of few of the points, which is that you are not only seeing the good parts of product management and you are ignoring the difficult and the hard parts of the product management, right? And when I say good part, the good parts are when you are having conversation with product managers, you think that they are the movers and shakers of the, the entire company, because they are taking strategic decisions, they are, pushing out features, and they are doing these. But you don't see the rigor, the database, the discipline that you have to kind of rigorously churn out data, understand the problem, have constant communication, upward and downwards, and own the success and the failures of any experiment, and that number driven approach. So that's the tough part of it, right? And many people, when designers have moved there, they realize that that's not something that's coming naturally to them, right? And then they have decided to come back. You can still be a designer with a lot more product centric thought process, and you can contribute there, and they continue to do that. But that's the whole idea, that if you think that you can do those things as well, you can make that transition. Otherwise, it's
I guess we lost Shaik. This could be a power glitch. This happened some other time as well. So audience, if you're having questions, please keep it coming, because as our speakers are speaking, something may trigger more questions for you. So put it in the LinkedIn thread or in the chat. We will get to that. So probably this is the last few minutes with our panel. We will definitely go there. So from product management, this is another big question that keeps coming. How about moving from being an IC into a manager, into a leadership role? How do I handle it? How do I adapt to it? Ramesh, especially you would have seen more managers, kind of blossoming. So what is your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I think again, so even this is a journey, right? And this is where, like I said, right? So few years into your career, right? You're in this dilemma, right? So should I continue? And a lot of time it's about, how which takes you faster and other things, right? But my suggestion is, or my recommendation is look, I think you need to be true and stick to your roots in design, right? So whether you're taking the managerial or the leadership path, it's all about, it's good to kind of, try that out. A lot of companies now have these kind of, a lead kind of a role where you don't have to take the burden of people management. I think that's where, a lot of people really don't know whether they can take up the burden of people management as well, right? It's not about your career as well, but it's all about managing other people's career as well, right? I think that's where, a lot of companies have these, lead kind of positions where, you have a bunch of people, rolling into you from a functional or an accountability standpoint, but you're not responsible for their careers, right? Maybe just try that out for a year or so and see, if that kind of works out. And then along with that, if you're holding the people management skills, maybe then that's the route, right? But right, and again, right, so I think the fundamental point here is when you start taking up those leadership or a managerial role, right? You need to start letting go of design, right? As designers, we tend to be, hey,
we are
why yes, we are productive, and hey, why can't you do like this, right? Right, so. And I was reading somewhere, right? It's you are not the instrument player, right? You are conducting an orchestra as you step into this managerial and the leadership roles, right? So you need to make sure that the orchestra kind of performs well, right? Rather than, And so it's that inquisitiveness to kind of, get into, hey, maybe I should just do it, right? Like, so, abstaining from that, and then, just, I think you have to understand that, your responsibility is to kind of provide more vision and guidance as people kind of execute on things, right? Like, I think is really important to understand. I think start doing that, and then you can see whether, you like to manage people or not, right? Like, and then take it as form. Take it as a course. Yeah.
Solid. I think it's like a design process. Try, check it out, and then please keep moving.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And
so, yes, Ramesh.
No, another thing that's right, like, so your career is like your design brief, right? Like, so typically, designers get a brief and then you go about defining all the things. So it's that simple.
So I think that's the theme. You own your career path. Amazing. So this is a very, very, I don't know, this question came again and again. So designers must have portfolio, but what about in different stages of design career, and how does this portfolio differ? Because when I started, I was just more doing craft related work, and then I moved a little more strategic, and then leadership. So do we need portfolios in all of this? Versus, especially because you're hiring designers and design leaders, what is your take on this? Do we even need portfolios as we move up?
That's a lovely question. Thank you so much for asking that, Krati. But so let's start from, junior designers. When you need to always think from a hiring manager perspective that what exactly they are looking for when they are screening the portfolios. So when it comes to junior designers, what we look for is more variety of work, more, takes of different types of design samples. Like, let's say if it's an Illustrator, you must have different design style. You shouldn't be sticking to one design style, because that means that if the company changes, you can't adapt to something different. And similarly, if you're a product designer, if you're marketing designers, a junior designer, they're looking for more variety of work so that we can see that, hey, if whatever design style a company is doing, the person can come in and adapt quickly. And from other traits, like as I mentioned earlier, was the hunger for knowledge, like how quickly you learn, how motivated you are, how self-taught you are, that you will learn and adapt to things quickly. Right? I think on another note, what I see happening is that, let's say if you're a marketing designer and you are applying to a product company, you need to understand what those people will be looking for. So if you're a marketing designers and you are just putting, random shots of like videos, it could be packaging design, this, that, and all. Let's say if you're applying for an e-commerce company, think what is a marketing team at e-commerce company is doing. It could be banner ads, it could be multiple campaigns. So when you are applying, if you have those portfolio items present, highlight them in first. Similarly, if you are applying for a brand agency or creative agencies, the work would be different. So at core, a junior designer, more variety of work, different forms, styles. When it comes to senior designer, it's more about a little bit more depth in the work. Let's say if it's a product designer who is presenting the portfolio, it would be more about what is your process like, what are the steps you have done, have you practiced some sort of user research, what was the key takeaway, and also kind of seeing that the flexibility in learning, and second, how adaptive and receptive they are to the feedback, because you might not know everything, but if you are very stubborn that, hey, whatever I've designed is correct, then there is just no learning. You will be in that bracket. When it comes to lead designer, they should have shown some sort of leadership skill. It could be leading a small pod. It could be mentoring junior designers or interns who are coming in the company. What are the other leadership things you have done? And the second part would be the business understanding of it. So when it comes to lead designers, you are at core, it differs from companies to company, but at core, you are responsible for leading a product, or it could be a small feature, it could be leading a whole product on its own, which also means that you are working with cross-functional team, how you are collaborating with PM. So when it comes to portfolios, or when the hiring managers is reviewing the work, they want to see what were the arguments which happened, because no product is designed in solitude. Otherwise, every dribble shot would be a product in itself.
Totally, and I think that is why the question was asked. Like, how do I show my arguments? How do I show my thought process? But from your answer, it's very clear that is what they're looking for. Your thinking process, your how did you approach that? How did you facilitate that? How did you? That's what your. This is classic. This is great.
Right. So
yeah,
it's
no,
more
I
about
just put up this question especially just to kind of, I know that we can talk about this forever, but we are given only 1 hour, and hence I wanted to ask this question quickly around, with COVID, how are things changing, especially with this remote, especially for designers, for engineering, I understand probably you can do the work alone. I'm not sure with the amount of collaboration needed, with the amount of cross-functional, how are things? I mean, please, you are leading a large team, so let us know how are things with COVID. Some are giving rosy pictures, some are saying, "Oh, you're doomed." How is it?
I can start us out.
Sure.
So I kind of got lucky in all this stuff of working at a company that sort of was already remote. Trello has, it's like 220 of us, and only about 60 work out of an office anywhere in the US. And so we sort of had our processes down, which was an advantage. And I've noticed from talking to a lot of other leaders from like co-located teams that it's been just like a huge adjustment. And I think the realization that I've had is that it comes down to a lot of just like new processes and new things that the teams have to do to sort of mimic or replace the collaboration that happens in person. And there's a little bit of like a spectrum of like teams that are really new to this remote collaboration thing are sort of like, oh, we need to be on a Zoom call all day together, and we need to like really make sure each other are working. It's kind of this like, they're trying to replace the office type feel. And then there's teams like ours, which are like, we've been working remote for a decade. So it's really, we understand all the different tooling. So I think there's, I guess this is not like a direct good, bad, and ugly, but the adjustment is going to be like, what is the right tool to use in this environment? Like for us working remotely, we were like, Figma is the design tool because we can both be in the same file.
Collaborate.
Our and our ideation tool is Mural for that same reason. So because we can't be around a whiteboard together, we always just hop into Mural. It happens like honestly in every meeting. If you get into that like abstract space of like, well, what is this? Well, like, oh, let's just open a Mural and like write it down. And then just there's like a real real pronounced thing that I'm seeing with the other teams at Atlassian that are going remote is like just fatigue from always being on Slack and Zoom because you don't get to have like the time away from it. So I think that's the thing, is it's like a big adjustment. But I think it's worth like really being intentional to figure it out, because I don't know, like in the next 2 years, none of us are going to be like working still in like the same normal way that we were 6 months ago. Like things at some level will be different long term. So it's like worth investing in figuring out like what works for the team.
What works.
So
that's brilliant advice. Mural, the screen fatigue is definitely true, but I think as designers, we do have tools. Probably if this happened 3 years ago, I don't know what we would have done. But I'm glad the virus came a little later. Any thoughts from your side, Ramesh? I mean, are you seeing, especially with a large team like yours, between US, India?
Yeah, I think one is, it took a couple of weeks for people to kind of get adjusted to that, new working norms. And I think, and everybody is kind of realizing that, right? Like the situation is not going to ease out in, let's say, the next week or so, right? Like it's going to be a long-term situation, right? And then, so what should we do to be more adaptive, right? In this kind of a work environment, right? Like as Stu mentioned, right? Like, so there's a lot of collaboration tools that are out there that we are leveraging to kind of, you use to kind of collaborate with designers from various different locations, I think, and also, since everybody is remote, right? Like it also gives us an opportunity to kind of, collaborate more, I would say, right? Like, so, maybe just for user testing and other things, right? Like, so, whether it's a business application that, we are designing, right? I think, of course, there are some challenges, but, I think it also gives us a tremendous opportunity, if you look at, right, like a lot of things that are being done offline, right, like so where you need to have physical presence, there's a lot of opportunity to see how can that be digitally done, right? Like for all you know, that can provide a more, meaningful value to the customers and to the business, right? So just looking at, identifying those opportunities, right, like where we could potentially, get things done. I think that's going to be the true, far of, utilizing this situation to the best to our abilities.
Absolutely, absolutely. We can, with such an amazing panel, I can talk all night. I don't think Menika is going to allow us to do that. So let's get at least a few questions from the floor. Please bring your questions on and let me share it with our panel. So let me know. Yeah, awesome. So I'm seeing that there are, several questions here. As Vasudha said, I don't see many openings for freshers, grads, interns, and product design or UX design currently, except in early stage startups. How might we navigate this situation? This is from Lakshmi. Vasudha, the question is for you.
Sure. So, there are not many openings for freshers, given the current scenario. I would say that, take the time in developing your portfolio and learning new skill set. It's what?
That's just my timer saying that we are on time. Go for it.
Yeah, so there are not many job openings. Hopefully things will get better and change in the market. It's very hard to predict market as of now, but it's a great time to kind of, build on the case studies, build on your side projects so that you can stand out in, when the hiring market kind of opens up. There are a couple of companies who are looking for, junior designers and senior designers as such. It's all about figuring out what is the value addition you can add to the company rather than thinking of it as a job item. Think of go to the company pages, figure out what are the problems you can solve for the company. Freelancing might be a quick fix for this. Reach out to clients and build on your portfolio based on that. Hopefully the market would improve, but for now, I think that's the best we can do.
That's the best. Okay, great. So, so there is a question specifically around, oh my God, I have so many questions for you guys. What would be your advice for a developer who has about 10 plus years of experience moving to design? What would be your guidance on that? I think it's open for all of us. There's no specific mention. So developer into design, how does that work?
Yeah, I think I also kind of replied to that question, right? Like, so why do you want to move into design, right? Like, I think answering that question would give a lot of, I think there's a strong arts background, right? Like, I think what, like Vasudha said, right? Like, so put your skills, your craft into, let's say, a side project or, build some portfolio, right? Like with the skill sets that you have, right? And then as part of, the interview process or, you can start socializing your portfolio work with, design community members, get the feedback and see how you're doing, get a mentor, so those all things can help. And then eventually you can kind of transition to that, the design position that you want.
So it is possible. It is possible, definitely. Okay. That's so this specific question is from Swaraj. Many designers say that design is a subjective thing. How do you define it, and what is the impact on a designer's performance? Is it really subjective? Probably I will start there. Stu?
Yeah, I think if you're talking about a logo or something, then sure. But there's actually ways to benchmark, like specifically like product design work, like from a usability standpoint. First and foremost, like you can test the design to see if it makes sense. Like I've had a few things like this where I've felt strongly about something, and then you put it in front of users and they're super confused. That's a really quick way to understand that it's not subjective. It's their mental models to follow. So yeah, like I would just say that like product design, well, okay, the other thing, so you can test it from a usability end, but then also like you can benchmark it from a business perspective as well. Like if we have an OKR set in the beginning of the project and we're like looking to move a metric, then the design and the execution from the rest of the team is going to be really quickly, easily benchmarked against how we performed to that goal. So, so yeah, I would say that on the visual side, yes, there's like some subjectivity, like color palette, you know, like the actual like visual design. But then once you get into like the actual UX side, it gets a lot less subjective really quickly, in my opinion.
Awesome, that's great. Menaka, can we take one more question? Is that okay if we go like a couple of minutes? It's okay? Awesome, great. So this question is coming from Lalatendu. What skill set should a UX designer, a senior lead, need to acquire to shift to product management? Probably Shaik, you can help us with some advice there. You're muted.
Yeah, hi.
Yes.
A lead to a product management, right? Yeah, I think like I said in the last conversation that I mean, of course, like you have various disciplines within the product management that you have to cover up. So one is your way of creating models and frameworks, and then identifying problems based on data. So and you can go ahead like you have all the frameworks like marketing, like sales. One of like I can go about like you can probably go and read about this all there, because product management itself is a discipline and there are 100 things to be done. One big thing that I talk about typically, and I would just like to point out, though we don't do that too much here, and I think that's the distinction between a product leader and a product manager, right? Okay, so what's the difference between a product manager and a product leader? Let me just first clarify that. So one is like, at least what I understand from, okay, and it's Institute of Product Leadership, so you guys will have a better understanding. But fundamentally, I mean, if somebody is just managing a product, that is one thing. But when you take leadership in terms of product leadership, then you also are managing the sales part of it, right? And selling is a very hard task, okay? Now, I have seen many designers come and say that I understand business, so can I start becoming a product leader, or maybe take up business roles? One thing is to understand, and the other thing is to able to sell it, right? And do the business. There's a difference. There's a vast difference between these two, right? So I think one of the best way to start is that you start your own business and do and try sell a product to a sizable number of people. If you are able to do that, then you have the right stuff inside to kind of, then you can learn the rest of it. But a vast majority of designers are not great salesperson, right? They can which is like they cannot do push sales, and that's where a big distinction comes. And I think that's one of the litmus tests that you can probably do to understand that whether you can do that or not. You have to understand, like, are you a designer who sits in the room and kind of designs great products, and you want to do the same thing with product management? Probably that's not going to work, right? So abstractly this one, otherwise you have the entire plethora of things that you can do to just learn the management aspect of the product management.
Yeah. Lovely. I'm going to try selling something. Try.
Experience. Yeah.
Oh wow! Experience is not selling yet. I'm gonna do it from tomorrow. No, yeah, you're right when you say that when you're taking ownership and really putting your product or value out, how are you able to really articulate what you're doing? And I totally agree with you that that's a skill by itself. And this has been an amazing evening for me. In spite of listening to all of it and the speed at which you are saying, I couldn't catch everything. But here is something that I have captured based on our discussion. We have talked about the entire life cycle of a design career. We started from moving into design, staying in design, moving up the career ladder to leadership, and then kind of moving out of design into product management. Almost the entire cycle we have talked about, and even the unprecedented times that we are in, especially about COVID, how are things, how is hiring happening, portfolios. We have covered a whole gamut of topics today. A few things that stood out to me, and I'm sure our audience would have taken more, is own your career path. Your career is your responsibility. Catch a mentor, do more side projects, check it out. It's okay to have imposter syndrome. We all have. that was fabulous, Vasudha. Get an understanding of business from a mindset perspective. Go ahead and be a little more flexible, adaptable, so that you can go ahead and read more. If at all you are getting into the other disciplines like product management, try and see all the skills that are needed for that particular discipline, like sales, taking ownership, accountability, responsibility in that area. This is pretty much what I got it. And if I kind of need to summarize it in like a simple word, it's ABCD. Anybody can design, but the can needs to be highlighted. It's not that you will be able to do it so easily, but there is a possibility. And thank you so much. Yes.
Kathy. It's such a fantastic session. Thank you, all of you, all the panelists. You did an amazing job. And Kathy, nobody could have hosted this better than you did. So it's a wonderful session. Thank you, everyone.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Yay, we did it. Thank you. Thank you, IPL, for doing such a celebration of design. Is something not, we don't go through this every year, but this has been very, very refreshing. Thank you so much for having us today. And this is the best, I think, Saturday evening in a long time. Thank you all. Thank you, Stu, Shaik, and Ramesh for sharing your thoughts, wisdom, experience, and everything today. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys.
We have a small gift for you. Karthi, would you do the honors, please?
Yes, though it is digital, it's a token of love and appreciation for your time and wisdom that you have shared with us, Shaik. You will be in the Hall of Fame of IPL. As of now, you would have already been there. Thank you so much, Stu. This is yours, and they are hosting, putting your name up there in the Hall of Fame. Ramesh, thank you very much for spending your time with us today. And of course, Vasudha, it was wonderful having you. The perspectives that you shared was something that we generally don't get to hear. This was awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And yeah, have an amazing, amazing evening. Whatever weekend is left, enjoy. And yes, I hope we get together again and do more such sessions in the future.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
So
thank
there
you.
is an award today for the best question asked, which goes to Lakshmi. Lakshmi, congratulations. You asked the best question and you will get our gift quite soon. And please send us your testimonials and win rewards. And we are successfully moving on to the next edition of the festival, the Leadership Festival. Please watch our webpage for the updates. So to give you a quick glimpse into the kind of speakers we have, here we have Naveen Jain, founder and CEO of Vayom. He's one of the celebrity billionaire Indians in Silicon Valley who will talk about how to lead with vision and execute to build your own billion. So please join us. And as we close for the day, I hope you had a great day spent with us. We at the Institute are grateful to the wonderful speakers, moderators, and of course you delegates for making this festival a successful one. See you at the Leadership Edition. Have a good weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica.